Hello everyone, it's Jorbs here to talk to you about my 13-0 rotating world record Slay the Spire streak on patch 2.2. In this series I've already spoken about my 8-0 Ironclad, 9-0 Silent, 10-0 Defect, and 11-0 rotating world record streaks on this patch, and I also just looked at a 10-0 Watcher streak. Not a world record, but I wanted to have a video to talk about how I was playing Watcher. So if you haven't watched all of those videos, you can check those out before this if you'd like, or just sit down and watch this. The rotating world record for Slay the Spire has sort of been the pinnacle achievement, the center of competitive, in quotation marks, focus for the game since the game came out, pretty much. And especially since Ascension came out. Although even before Ascension came out, I remember Celerity having, I believe, a 50-0 streak on Ascension 0, which was, I believe, the longest that anybody had at the time. Back at Ascension 0, the win rates were very, very, very high, and so it wasn't very feasible to really compete on the world record streak, because when you have a streak that's taking, 100+ hours to complete, there's not really much accessibility. There's a large barrier to entry for anybody to have a go at beating that. You have to commit to playing and focusing for 100+ hours. And on top of that, a streak that is that long sort of loses the beautiful thing that a streak allows, which is that a streak allows you to focus in at a competitive level of Spire play for a short period of time and create an accomplishment that you can show to everyone and say, hey, I did this, look at me, I'm really cool. Which is awesome, because Slay the Spire doesn't have like tournaments or competitive events or anything like that. And so if you don't look at streaks or something comparable to a win streak, there's very little ability for players to delineate, this is my practice time, this is time that I'm spending playing Spire for fun. Okay, let's turn on and play Spire competitively. How competing for the world record streak generally works, the general mode of gameplay, is that you chill out, you experiment a lot, you learn a lot, you try to learn everything about the game as quickly as you can to become as powerful as possible at Slay the Spire, basically. Which doesn't necessarily mean trying to win every run. When you're playing a run of Slay the Spire, there are hours of extra math that you can do to improve your hallway fights by 5 to 10 HP over the course of the run, for example. And it doesn't necessarily serve you, in order to learn the game and become a better player, to do all of that math every single time. If you get to a point where you know how to do that math, you're spending an hour per run slowing down your ability to get in lots of different situations and learn how different cards work and all of that stuff, because you're just doing math over and over again, which is time consuming, but not really groundbreaking or useful for learning once you understand how it's done. It's also somewhat exhausting. So you can play and have fun and experiment and whatever, and then if you notice, oh, I've sort of locked in on this patch and I've won a couple of the last runs, then you can start thinking, okay, time to go for a world record streak, and all of a sudden you can buckle in. You can do all of that math for every run. You can spend twice as long per run working everything out and see how far that world record streak goes, or that streak goes. The dream, of course, would be for it to become a world record, but there's no real need for it to. Setting a new personal best is a really cool feeling. Even just going 4-0 and winning once with each of the characters is pretty cool. On top of that, so people compete for the Ironclad, Silent, Defect, and Watcher world records. Those are the 4 individual characters. But on top of that, people compete for the rotating world record. And the rotating world record is sort of the pinnacle achievement because it requires mastery of all 4 characters at the same time. So you can't sit down and be a Silent only player for 3 months and get really, really good at Silent and set a super long streak on Silent and then just easily get the world record streak. It shows that you have mastery of every single character, because you'll play Silent, but then next you have to win with Defect, and then next you have to win with Watcher, and then next you have to win with Ironclad. And that is hard. It's hard to not only know enough about every character to win with them and be confident with them, but also be dialed in on all 4 of them at the same time, is sort of what it feels like is required to set one of these streaks. So I looked at the history of these streaks, and I wanted to sort of skim over it before I got into actually talking about this 13-0. I already mentioned Celerity going like 50-0 at Ascension 0, which is awesome. I don't know of any other Ascension 0 streaks. Generally, we weren't caring and tracking those super much. I think to this day, my Ascension 0 streak stands at 18-0. That's the longest I've ever played. And it ended when I was so bored of playing the game that I took Searing Blow in Act 1 as Ironclad in an act that had almost no campfires, then took Calling Bell from the Guardian fight, and then died to Gremlin Leader. And, you know, looking back at it, no, I didn't play that run particularly well, but, like, playing a game that has that high win rate just isn't very fun. So Ascension 15 came out, and we're looking at early 2018, this streak here. And that really revitalized the concept of competing for streaks in this game. Ascension 10 was before Ascension 15. I'm not going to go all the way back to that. I remember like a little bit of streak stuff happening in Ascension 10. But Ascension 15 was a new difficulty spike. And if you look at how things were going, you know, not super incredibly great. Like, I'd say win rates at Ascension 15 when it came out were maybe 40% or so overall. Something like that. So I had a 5-0 on the 2nd of March in 2018. I don't know if this was the world record or not at the time, but I just want to like sort of demonstrate to you how this difficulty level evolved. This is me just playing some Ascension 0 for fun, I think. Then starting on the 15th of March, starting on the 13th of March, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I think we as a community were learning the patch pretty quickly. Ascension 15 provided some new challenges and raised the difficulty a bit, but it didn't really take us that long to sort of get the hang of things. And on top of that, the devs were like coming out with balance patches which generally buffed the player. And so Ascension 15 sort of broke down. And this idea of competing at the highest difficulty in Spire started to lose a lot of meaning as players had like 90 to 95% win rates at this difficulty. It just wasn't super interesting anymore. Here's a 15-0 streak that I played. I took a break for an endless run in between, it looks like. I think this is the only endless run I've ever played. But yeah, that's a 15-0 that I had in June. And this was not the most exciting anymore. Like, you're just winning all of the time. The problem with winning a run in Slay the Spire is there's no guarantee that at any point in the run was it close. And maybe it was close for like the first act or the first act and a half, but maybe after that it was just very, very easy for the rest of the time. And so when you win runs in Slay the Spire, you're often spending like 50% of your time not very engaged in the game because you're just very, very confident that you've already won the run and there's sort of no way that you can lose. And this was especially true on Ascension 15 when there wasn't a second boss at the end of Act 3 and there wasn't an Act 4. So on Ascension 20, you're not sure which of the other Act 3 bosses you'll be fighting, and the Act 4 fights are very punishing on turn 2 and 3, which makes it much, much, much harder to just feel 100% certain that you've won. It's possible to get really unlucky and die even if you have a very strong deck sometimes on Ascension 20. Not always, but a lot of the time it's possible. On Ascension 15, you could start Act 3, look at the Act boss, see that your deck countered it, and like there was actually just no plausible way that you could win, or no plausible way that you could lose, rather. And so you're just going through the motions for the last 20 to 30 minutes of the run. And even going through Act 2, sometimes you already knew that you were winning. So, this sort of slowed down and wasn't quite as challenging or interesting. I was still streaming a lot of it looks like, but I was very, very excited when Ascension 20 released. And Ascension 20, I believe, released on the 16th of... Is the 8th month August? I think so. Anyway, the 16th of August in 2018. Everybody was racing to unlock it. I just edited a text file to fully unlock it because I was... Like, I had played so much Ascension 15. I was so ready for this difficulty spike, and then I, like, played my Ascension 16 runs and won every single one of them, and I was like, God, this is just not doing it for me yet. And then I won an Ascension 17 run. I'm like, oh, this is such a waste of my time. I finally ended up losing a defect run. Oh, well, actually, no. I just won every single run and then switched to Ascension 20, it looks like. So yeah, I just didn't want to play the intermediate difficulties. Give me the real stuff, was my thinking. And I actually set a 3-0 at Ascension 20, like, within... What is this? Within 48 hours of the difficulty releasing. And sitting here now, you might think, oh, 3-0, that's not, like, super... like, people go 3-0 all the time. When I go 3-0 at Ascension 20, with the heart even, I don't even, like, remark on that anymore. It's just not even worth mentioning. But if you look at, like, my other runs from this period... This difficulty level was hard, and some of this is that we as players don't understand like how to adapt our decks to properly beat the second Act 3 boss, and some of it is that a lot of these cards just were not as strong as they are now. They were much, much, much weaker than they are now. If I look at cards, does it show me the current version or the old version? I don't know. Trying to think what would be a card that I could look at. I think it's showing me the current version of cards, unfortunately. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the cards were a lot weaker. We weren't as experienced on the patch, and that 3-0 I think was the most wins that anybody had had in a row on Ascension 20 for a while. It's called, like, doing the rainbow or something, beating the game with all of the characters in a row, and Watcher wasn't out yet, so the 3-0 is that thing. And then I managed 5-0 on 9/24/2018, and this is a world record that I believe stood for about a week until I went 6-0, like a week later. About a month. Maybe it stood for about a month until I went 6-0 later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that was it for this patch with Ascension 20 that didn't have the heart. I'm not sure that anybody has ever done more than 6 in a row on this patch. Because when the heart came out, we all started playing against the heart, and the heart released on the 29th of October. So we didn't get a long time to play around in the non-heart Ascension 20, because if you look at my run histories, I was actually doing like a charity stream with Jessica this week, and like we were just playing tons and tons and tons, and then finally it released and we jumped right in and unlocked the heart. Well, here's the shield and spear. I was actually really close to breaking the 6-0 this week. I had a week where I had a different Slay the Spire streamer on the channel every day, and we were raising money for charity. It was an awesome, awesome thing. It was just super, super fun. And we actually almost broke the world record, like sort of as a collaborative effort, where like I'm at the controls, but I have somebody on board with me talking me through stuff the entire time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just couldn't get there with Silent, unfortunately. I believe this is also when I played my Corruption Dead Branch Effect run with Celerity. See if I can find that one. Don't remember exactly what day it was or anything. Did we go too far? I think we went too far. To this day, one of the most unique runs of Slay the Spire that I have ever played. That one doesn't have corruption. Here you go. Dead Branch, corruption, defect run. Yeah, I remember this being a ton of fun and sort of crazy. This was an awesome time in Slay the Spire. The game was difficult, challenging, but still like very rewarding to play. I was playing tons of it and enjoying myself a lot. And then the Heart came out and made it like even cooler. So the Heart came out, and look at our results against the Heart. I like won my first Ironclad and Silent runs against the Heart somehow. I have no idea how. But in general, like at this time in Slay the Spire history, having a 35% win rate on Ironclad was good. Like I think on this patch I got to a point where I had 40% on Ironclad, 30 on Silent, and 35 on Defect or something like that, and I considered that like incredibly good. So this game was punishing. The cards were worse, the potions were worse, the boss relic pool was worse. The enemies do not mess around when you don't have a lot of strong cards. And I was playing a ton of this patch. I was slowly learning it. And then eventually on the 19th of November, after losing like 16 in a row or something, I went 4-0. And believe it or not, that is a world record. It's crazy to think that the player who played this sequence of runs set a world record immediately afterwards. Part of that though is like you win one or two and you dial in, you lock in, you focus, and you really try to win runs. When you're losing a ton, it's easy to just be trying out tons of different stuff and seeing, is this gonna work? Is this gonna work? Can I fight this elite with this deck and survive? No, 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 no. I've been watching a lot of Trackmania, which is like a racing game recently, and it's really fun to watch very good players compete on new tracks. And there's a mode where you have like 15 minutes to learn the track, and then you go into knockout, and the slowest players each round get eliminated, and you just keep on playing it in knockout until you're left with one player left. And it's really cool watching these these very good players learning a new track, because like they might drive it once at an okay speed to learn everything, and they'll probably like take a wrong turn once or twice because they don't have any idea what they're meant to do. So maybe they'll like take 2 or 3 tries to get through it the first time. And then after that, they'll like maybe complete the track successfully like 3 or 4 times over the rest of the 15 minutes that they're learning. And the rest of the time, they're like trying to cut this corner with a certain line to see if they can shave like 1/10 of a second off of this segment of the track and crashing into the wall and dying. And they do that over and over again with every element of this new course. And that's how learning a game when you're very good at the game that you're learning looks for a lot of people. For me, certainly. I'm not trying to like drive central lines through this Ascension 20 patch, do the things that I think are pretty strong, and see if I can get like a 25% win rate overall. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to experiment with tons of different stuff, see if I can squeeze through this elite fight without dying with this deck, see if this card's good enough to beat the boss fight. Things that I'm not sure the answers to yet, and I'm dying an awful lot because I'm still exploring the outer regions of your success space, basically, for this patch. But then, once you like win a run, and then you win another run, all of a sudden you're like, okay, time to really switch on and dial in. And I managed to win my Defect and Ironclad runs afterwards as well, and there was a 4-0. So, I mean, this 4-0 is largely because I got Runic Pyramid 3 times out of 4 runs, I think. And then my Defect run had 2 Bias Cognitions and an early Orange Pellets. So, you know, no mystery as to why I won those 4 runs. But still, this was a pretty remarkable thing. Nobody else had a 4-0 at the time. And I was actually Googling around for this, and I couldn't find exactly the next 2 months of world record rotating streak history here. If I remember right, a streamer from Russia broke the 4-0 with a 6-0 at some point, like a while later, maybe a month. But my memory's not perfect here. In fact, I was surprised at how many things I remembered wrong when I went back through this to look at all the histories and stuff. So yeah, that happened, and the world record was sitting at 6-0. We're playing tons and tons and tons and tons and tons. Tons and tons, tons and tons and tons. Look at all of these losses. I was not winning every run, that's for sure. This was, I think, my favorite time playing Slay the Spire ever. Like, the game was new, it had these fresh challenges, it was very, very difficult. It felt like there was so much to learn and so much reward for learning new things, new tricks to... This is like sort of a redefinition of how Spire worked, where before this the game was almost entirely about surviving Act 2 and then getting like one thing that let you beat the 3rd boss, pretty much. And then Ascension 20 came out, and the game was now about surviving Act 2 and getting 2 things to beat the final 3 bosses. And when Ascension 20 with Heart came out, the game became about surviving Act 2, but you had to commit to your deck a small enough amount that you could then transition to your deck into something that was very good at defeating both 2 Act 3 bosses and all of Act 4, which is a huge ask. All of a sudden Act 3 was engaging, all of a sudden card decisions felt like they had so much more consequence. All of a sudden the run was long enough that you had the ability to build one sort of deck for the first 2 acts and then start taking very different cards in Act 3 because suddenly the things that your deck had to do were very different. And that's sort of where I formed a lot of my opinions about how Ascension 20 with Heart works, was coming from Ascension 15 to this difficulty and seeing how it was different from Ascension 15, where I was, of course, a very, very good player there. So, the 7th of February, we get Runic Pyramid with Silent. Runic Pyramid with Silent. Well done, us. This is actually an Afterimage Catalyst deck with Nightmare, and I mean Nightmare Catalyst is going to do all sorts of good things for you. Well done. We had Orange Pellets, Snecko Eye Defect. This looks like it was a cool run. I don't really remember it. Ironclad with Dead Branch and 3 copies of Corruption. That'll win. That'll win on any patch of the game, I would say. Oh, wait. I'm in the wrong place. I died. No wonder I don't remember these runs. They weren't even part of the world record streak. I was missing a 1 before before it. Sorry about that. Okay, anyway. We got a couple of eggs on Silent and a Paper Crane. Defect wins a Snecko Eye Ice Cream run. Snecko Eye and Ice Cream work very, very powerfully together. Ironclad gets through this with 4 Reapers. Yeah, that'll do it. 4 Reapers and a Limit Break. Silent puts together a Runic Pyramid deck with a Wraith Form Plus. I believe Wraith Form does what Wraith Form does now already at that point. We get a Defect win, we get an Ironclad win off Necronomicon, and Preserved Insect and Runic Pyramid largely. Silent gets a win. That's 7. You look at my run times here and compare them to what my run times were when I set my 4-0. They're like twice as long or something. So you can see just by looking at the run times how much more knowledge I'm like leveraging for these runs. I've always been someone who plays Slay the Spire. It's weird. Depending on who you ask, I play Slay the Spire rapidly or slowly. People have very different ideas about what it means to play Slay the Spire rapidly. But my history as a gamer is I used to play online poker at an incredibly high level. I was one of the top 100 online no limit hold'em poker players in the world in 2011, in my opinion. And I used to play 18 plus tables at the same time. So I'm very used to like very fast and accurate calculations. Not always calculations made with perfect precision, but I'm very used to like playing and executing strategies somewhat quickly and also somewhat subconsciously. Part of playing poker in that way is that you learn how to take incredibly complex knowledge about a game and internalize it to a point where you don't have to think about it even. So, looking at a silent run and seeing that I spent 2.5 hours on it at this time in my career implies to me that I was like thinking quite a lot. And then unfortunately we lost Reptimancer with defect, and that was that. But this 7-0 streak, I believe still stands for this patch. I am almost 100% confident that nobody has ever broken this world record for this patch. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody can call me on it, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. It's a very, very impressive streak for that patch. And sometimes I think about going back to this patch and trying to beat it because the next big thing that happened to the game was who dat? This is Watcher coming out 7 months later. Yeah. So 7 months later, Watcher comes out. The world record for Ascension 20 rotating streaks is still 7. Still the 7 that I set back in February. And Watcher's on the beta. Watcher went through a lot of changes. I don't know that I was losing every single one of those runs as Watcher. I might have been abandoning some of them. I don't know. But Watcher went through a lot of changes. We were all trying to learn her. You can see that I'm losing tons on Watcher here. Again, I'm trying out tons of different things. I'm not like sitting down and thinking, oh, this must be the way to win as Watcher. I'm going to execute that strategy exactly and see if I can win. I'm just going into runs, trying a ton of stuff, just throwing things at the wall and seeing how the character plays. So, we were losing a lot on Watcher, and Watcher was buffed heavily over the course of her beta. There was just a lot of feedback to the devs that Watcher did not feel very fun to play. We were losing a lot of runs in ways that didn't feel fun at all. Back then, her cards were much, much, much weaker, and you were losing a lot of runs to like Lagavulin in situations where your cards just didn't have enough damage on them unless you got lucky enough to hit Vigilance and then go into Eruption on the turn where you weren't getting attacked. And it was like just, it felt sort of unplayable. So Watcher got heavily buffed. Unfortunately, Watcher still feels sort of not incredible in my opinion, but I honestly prefer Watcher now than I did on the beta when she was first coming out. And my 7-0 streak actually stood unmatched until February of 2020. So almost a full year before Crimson Blur broke it on, you know, a new patch with Watcher. At the time, Watcher win rates were already above 70%, and so, I mean, I am still very, very proud of that 7-0 without Watcher. When I was extending my personal best, the thing that I cared about on the new Watcher patch was actually hitting better than 7-0 on the other characters with Watcher wins in rotating. So when I set my 11-0, there were 3 Watcher wins in that and 8 wins on the other characters, right? I'm pretty sure. So my 11-0 was the first time that I actually broke that, although I had like quite a few 9-0s before I set an 11-0. Anyway, on February 3rd of 2020, Blur tied the record. He didn't even break it, but he was the first person to manage 7-0 on any patch of the game, killing the heart rotating through the characters, other than me. So that was really awesome. If you search for like the Reddit thread, you can see people talking about him tying that. Blur was playing incredibly well in early 2020. I think he was like very clearly the best defect player in the world at that time, and I, on top of that, think he's probably, if you look at his defect play then, I think it is still better than like probably every other Spire player's defect play except maybe mine, and the only reason mine would be better is that I copied what he was doing and tried to refine it for a full year. So yeah, I think he was playing Spire just insanely well. For sure. So he managed to tie that on February 3rd, but then that only lasted for a little bit before I got to a point where I sort of understood what was going on with Watcher now. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Before Ironclad died to Reptimancer. I said this on March the 5th. So, lots and lots of learning, lots of repetition, and of course, in order to get a 9-0, you're gonna have to have a decent amount of luck. So looking at like my relics in these runs, there are a lot of pretty good relics here. Pretty decent cards on my decks too, I would say. This run also, of course, benefited from getting to play Watcher 3 times in 9 runs. So for me, even though I had managed this 9-0, I still didn't really feel like it was more impressive than the 7-0 that I achieved without Watcher, which has stood for like over a year as my PB without Watcher. But you know, I was certainly happy. This is, I don't know. Depends which ones you count and stuff, but this is like at least the 3rd time that I've set a rotating world record. Maybe it's like the 7th time that I've set a rotating world record if you count some of the ones without the heart. Maybe I've done it even more than that if you go back to Ascension 15. I don't remember if those were world records or not. But yeah, this is definitely for Ascension 20 at least. It's the 3rd time that I've set a rotating world record, and that was really nice to have. And Blur went ahead and beat this all of 2 weeks later. So on the 21st of March, Blur managed 10, which was super, super impressive. There was a ton of hype in the Slay the Spire community about this like sort of win streak battle that Blur and I sort of had going back and forth, where he had managed to tie me and then I beat it very soon afterwards, and then he doubled down and got it back. And yeah, like very, very, very cool stuff. In Blur's 10-0, you might be thinking, okay, but like Watcher just came out. The game's easy now. Look at these players just playing the game like a few months into the patch. They probably don't even know what they're doing. I'm sure this win rate will increase, the world record will extend and stuff like that. I really think we were playing out of our minds at this point in Slay the Spire. Blur's 10-0 rotating record stood unmatched for almost a year. So similar to my 7-0 on the patch pre-Watcher, Blur's 10-0 has never been equaled on this patch, and it wasn't equaled until almost a year later on a patch which made the game much easier. And when I say much easier, I mean like win rates went up like 10% at least on all of the characters. Like the game has been patched to give massive buffs to the player since this. So, who better to do it than me again? Yeah? So this streak started, well, we talked about this streak already actually in this video series. It's in here somewhere when I'm playing 1 billion runs in the same month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that was awesome. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4. Is this one the 4th time that I've set the rotating world record for Ascension 20 with heart? I think so. I believe so. You start to lose track. And so that was really cool. I remember this world record streak being awesome. I talked about it at length in the previous video in this series. You can check that out if you want. But what I didn't talk about much in the previous video of the series is what happened next. I was the second person ever to break this 10-0 rotating wins barrier for Ascension 20 with Heart, of course on a much easier patch than when Blur did it, but only 2 people have done that ever in the history of the game since Ascension 20 with Heart started October 29th of 2018, I believe. It was like... There's no way that's possibly true, is there? This is... God, I'm getting so old. This is like 2.5 years later almost? 2.25 years later? So in 2.25 years of people playing this difficulty of the game, 2 people have managed to go 10-0. Myself and Blur. And within a week and a half, 2 more people did as well. Baylor hit 11 and Terrence hit 11 at the same time, basically, on the same day in order to tie my world record streak. Baylor was slain in Act 1, unfortunately going for 12, but Terrence managed to extend to 13-0. So that was really awesome. I had both of them join me and we just talked through our win streaks and talked about our opinions of patch 2.2, especially Silent has changed a lot. Ironclad has changed a little bit. We talked about Watcher and how the way to lose at Watcher seems mostly to be to get bored of playing. And that was a really, really cool discussion that I had with them. And, you know, this is an incredibly impressive and cool thing that happened, that nothing like that has ever happened before in the history of this rotating world record win streak. Nobody has ever... Okay, me and Blur trading the record back and forth. It was extended... Well, Blur tied it, he didn't extend it. So it was extended like twice in a month. But in this situation, I guess in this situation it was extended twice in a month too. Maybe there's something special about the beginning of the year. Maybe people spend time with their families and then come back fresh and ready to crush the Spire. I don't know. But yeah, I guess there was a huge competitive spike around the world record a year ago, and then there was this one. And so that happened. This is twice in a row now where my world record has been broken, like less than a month after I set it. So that is too bad for me, but fortunately I managed to break the 10-0 barrier for a second time, like a couple of weeks later myself, and win 13 to tie Terrence at the end of January and the beginning of February here. So my mind state for this world record streak, this is also... The 11-0 was the first time that I went 8-0 on the non-Watcher characters, but this is, I guess, an extension. This is the most wins rotating that I have had in a row. Actually, at Ascension 20, I've never gone 13-0 with Watcher yet. As I record this video, I'm at 11-0, but if you look at like the individual characters, I haven't managed to go 13-0 on any of the individual characters yet either. 12-0 is my best on Watcher. So this is the longest streak that I've played in my career. I have slightly mixed feelings about the state of Slay the Spire. As somebody who played through Ascension 50 for Ascension 15 and Ascension 0 being the highest difficulties of the game, I remember what it was like to play this game when win rates were 90% plus. I don't want to do that again. And this game starts to feel more and more like it's trending up there, and it's sort of like bittersweet to break the 10-0 barrier twice in a month, because you don't want to be able to do that. You want the game to be challenging you. At least I do. But still, very, very cool world record. Very awesome. And all of that great stuff. So, this began at the end of January, and in January I killed the Heart 127 times. I streamed 267 hours. So if you do the math there, I am getting Heart kills at a rate of 1 per less than 2 hours, and that's not counting how long it takes me to lose in the game. So I am just absolutely tearing up the Spire here. I'm playing at that rate, at that quantity, and winning 60% of the time over the course of the month, including like some periods where I was adjusting to what was going on, where I was not winning very much at all, and an ending period where I was absolutely exhausted, where I wasn't winning very much at all. In the middle of this month, when I set the 11-0, I was playing incredibly well, probably the best Spire that I've ever played, I would say. The 13-0 happens at the very end of the month, and this was sort of interesting, because I've done this 3 times, this like month of Spire thing, and I always set 100 heart kills as my initial goal. The first time I got exactly 100, the second time I got exactly 100, except that I didn't count 2 of them accidentally, so upon review I realized I'd killed 102 accidentally. And so this time I set out to break 102, because that was accidentally my personal best. And I just absolutely annihilated it. Like, the game was so much easier than in the other months where I had tried to achieve this thing. And so I like cruised through that, and the second time that I did it, the game was remarkably easier than the first time already, and so it sort of like slowed down at the end. It became clear that I didn't have to push super hard, but this time I wanted to push really hard. So I set myself a stretch goal. It was either like 120 or 125 or something. And then I just like, I hadn't been doing super well, but with the end in sight, I sort of like turned my jets on a little bit. And in the last like, let's see. Let's look at how quickly the last 27 kills happened. So it's past the end. This is the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oops, I'm counting wins and losses. I shouldn't be doing that. Sorry, very professional. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. If you're comparing this to what it looked like when I was playing Ascension 20 when it first came out, it's almost like it's inverted. Like, when Ascension 20 first came out, that's about how many losses I would have per that many runs. But here I just like, with the end in sight, I basically like turned it back on again, I want to say. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I managed to go 27 and 17 at the very end of the month, which is 27 out of 17. 27 out of 44 is what we actually want to look at. Slightly over 60%. So, you know, that's not incredible. In the middle of the month, for reference, I went 44 and 60, which is slightly below 75%. But I was like 40% win rate at the very start of the month, and after my 11-0 world record, I was about 40% for a very long time as well. So this was me seeing the end was in sight, having an entire month of play under my belt, knowing that the pressure of achieving the personal best was off my shoulders, and just wanting to like have fun and see how far I could go. And I set myself a stretch goal and just blew through it really easily, made it to 127, and without realizing, I began my 13-0 world record streak in the final 5 runs of the month. So, let's actually look at the runs. I haven't talked about this for 45 minutes. I want to talk at some point about like transferring learning in this video too. Maybe we'll like get halfway through the runs and then I'll go on a tangent. So anyway, Watcher run. I talked about Watcher a lot in the Watcher only video, preferring not to trade Boss Relic. We start with looking for card removes or transforms, enough damage to get through elite fights, and then whatever other, I mean, like, most of the Watcher cards are really good. So here I started Cut Through Fate, Golden Idol, Empty Fist over Bowling Bash, which is like, I'd love to have a Bowling Bash in the deck, but I think getting your stat swapping working and functional first is your priority. And it doesn't really work when you have 2 cards dedicated to it in a 12-card deck. But once you have 3 cards dedicated into a 12-card deck, it's already looking pretty good. Once you have 4 in like a 13-card deck, it starts to actually feel like it's online, especially if you have like a potion or a scry card to help you out. Get an early Tantrum as well. This is an incredibly powerful card. Tantrum is our second way into Wrath, as well as like sort of our 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th way into Wrath. Just, you can play it so many times, so you go through your deck. And yeah, getting that early is awesome. Got a Protect Transform, and then we upgrade Eruption on floor 6. A lot of people express like confusion about my pattern for upgrading Eruption. I think because they have in their heads that it's either good or bad. When the like very simple truth about upgrading Eruption is that if you need energy, it's good, and if you don't need energy, it isn't very good. So in a run where I don't have more ways into Calm, of course Calm makes you energy, but I don't have more ways into Calm, I don't have any 0-cost cards, and I do have another Tantrum and an Empty Fist, both of which sort of demand more energy, because they're ways to deal lots of damage with attacks, but they don't give you energy to play those attacks or block cards at the same time or whatever. In a situation like that, I definitely want to be upgrading Eruption. Also, I have Protect in my deck, so this is a 2-cost card as well. Extra reason to care about the upgrade. 0 damage Gremlin Knob, upgrade Vigilance as well. I remember just having tons and tons of damage here and wanting a little bit more block. I think it's like fine. Vigilance upgrades from 8 block to 12 block, which is like a pretty good output for an upgrade. Usually your block upgrades are only +3, and honestly, upgrading a defend would be really good in Act 1 if the upgrade all strikes and defends event and Pandora's Box didn't exist. But because those things exist, you generally are not going to want to upgrade a defend in Act 1. Upgrading like Survivor on Silent in Act 1 is pretty fine. Upgrading Vigilance on Watcher is pretty much fine. Adding a block card to your defect deck and then upgrading it is pretty much fine. Same with Ironclad. It's nice to have extra block if you can afford it, but the primary thing is to make sure you have enough damage to get through the Gremlin Knob fight and get through like the Slavers Act 2 fight and stuff like that. Kill Hexaghost before it kills you and all that. We get a Kunai on floor 9, which is awesome. Looking for a Flurry of Blows now to make that Kunai tick. And we actually never found a Flurry of Blows in this run, so unfortunately we had to do it all with Weave eventually. But yeah, Peace Pipe on floor 10. Watcher is strong enough that she often doesn't need to rest or really upgrade cards either at campfires, and she hates basic cards so much. So grabbing a Peace Pipe is really awesome. We actually got 2 Wishes as well on floor 11 and 13, which is fun. Wish is not a card that is like the best card in Watcher's arsenal, but it's a good way to turn a run where you have an advantage into a snowballing run where you definitely win. And it's actually, like, if you're not dying to Act 2 hallway fights and elites, basically, this card lets you turn those fights into extra gold, and it's like an okay card for the boss gauntlet. It's scaling availability. It's poor scaling, like it's inefficient to spend 3 energy to just get 3 strength, but sometimes you just need any sort of scaling to survive the Act 3 and 4 endgame fights, and this can do that okay for you. So we got that stuff, removing strikes at campfires, beating slime boss without taking damage, and taking holy water from the thing. We got another Crescendo, and we got Apparitions. I think this is the first time that I've taken Apparitions on any of the Watcher runs that I've talked about here. These runs have been offered Apparition, I feel like surprisingly few times, given that they are all winning runs. Because Apparition event is very, very, very strong, for sure. I got asked whether it and Upgrade All Strikes Defends was stronger, and said Upgrade All Strikes Defends was stronger, which is like, in this run, ironically, I ended the run with no strikes and defends. But the thing is, like, Upgrade Strikes Defends feels like it's stronger for guaranteeing safety through Act 2. And apparitions don't really feel that way. Where the apparition event is very, very strong, in my opinion, like the strongest possible case for it is you've already taken some damage in Act 2, so your current HP is down around 50%, so you're not giving up a bunch of current HP to take it. And you're playing a deck which is likely to take like 10 to 20 damage per fight, and chunk damage that it just can't manage to block, and has trouble sustaining the health back. In that situation, taking apparitions lets you change that into taking very little damage per fight because you're all of a sudden having apparitions. And the downside of risking getting like one shot in the Act 2 elite fights, yeah, that would really suck, but it would happen if you didn't take apparitions too. So it's less of a significant downside because it's not like not taking the apparitions saves you from that either. Whereas if you currently have 60 HP and you're looking at apparitions, if you take them and then don't draw them when you're getting attacked for 35, you lose the entire run. Whoops. Whereas if you had that HP banked, you'd be safe. Now, apparitions can also be really useful for helping you set up safely in late game fights. If you can engineer a way to consistently draw them for turn 2 and 3 of the Heart fight and the Act 4 Elite fight, they're really nice there. There's lots of potential late game application, but that starts to get into like exactly what does your deck look like. And the thing I'd say about apparitions on Watcher is that a lot of the time Watcher's deck is strong enough to not need them for the late game gauntlet. So I wouldn't recommend taking apparitions every single time on Watcher specifically. If I was on 60 health here and I felt like my deck was pretty good at blocking, I think it would be correct not to be taking them. It's easy to overlook how much they slow your deck down as well by putting 3 draws into your deck that do nothing except defend you. So that's a thing to consider as well. But in this situation, I guess I decided to take them. Which, I mean, if it's wrong, it can't be wrong by that much, I don't think. So, seems fine. We got Tranquility, and on floor 21, we get the Bloody Idol. The Bloody Idol's very, very, very strong. Not just because it sustains you for 5 HP every time you pick up gold, which happens at the end of like every hallway fight, plus some other things. In this run in particular, we have 2 wishes which can gain us gold for sustain if we want. But the Bloody Idol is very strong because it's not the other 2 options at this event. The other 2 options at this event are to take a curse, that's it, just enjoy your curse, or to lose like 40% of your max HP, 40% of your max HP in current HP, or something like that, 35% maybe, I don't know. A large amount, a large chunk, and gain 5 max HP as a reward for that. And that trade is usually very, very bad when you're about to fight Act 2 Elites. When you're about to fight Act 2 Elites, you typically care a lot about your current HP and not that much about your max HP right now. So, like, Golden Idol, taking Golden Idol isn't that incredible. I think this floor is like slightly better than nothing, but it's not a huge thing. Golden Idol doesn't tend to make you that much gold over the course of the run, and 6 max HP is a price to be paying for it. But the fact that Golden Idol lets you take Bloody Idol instead of taking a curse or dying in this event, that's a really, really big deal. So nice to get that event after picking up Golden Idol. Also, keep in mind that you often want to go to lots of Act 2 events because you're often having trouble surviving hallway and elite fights, and often very excited about getting apparitions, upgrade, strikes, defends, and perhaps also bites, and also the arena fight and stuff like that at the end of the act is a thing to consider. So anyway, that happened. We bought Potion Belt and Tropic Brew at the store, so we're all potioned up for these elite fights. Beat Gremlin Knob, Gremlin Leader fairly easily, get an Nunchaku into Fear No Evil. Sort of was lacking Calm, but we've added a Tranquility and a Fear No Evil recently. And then we get Gambling Chip plus Bag of Preparation shortly afterwards. So now all of a sudden, I didn't really talk about Holy Water plus Gambling Chip, but I guess I should. Holy Water gives you 3 miracles, which gives you 8 cards in your starting hand. Gambling Chip lets you discard as many of them as you'd like to draw cards other than them. So if you don't really need miracles at the start of a fight. Like if you really want to put Deva Form in play, for example, and you'd rather discard Miracles to draw further into your deck to help you do that, you can. Gambling Chip's very powerful, and then Bag of Prep takes us up to a 10-card starting hand with Bag of Prep with a Gambling Chip, which is very, very good. But also I should talk about Establishment probably. So what does my deck have right now? It's got some pretty good damage for like Act 2 elite fights and stuff. We can get through those. It's got some sustain and some scaling in the form of Wish, which is scaling within fights and also scaling over the course of the run and like getting gold and stuff. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of scaling though, and it doesn't have any clear way to block for late game once the apparitions are played. I haven't gotten a Mental Fortress, I haven't gotten a Talk to the Hand yet in this run. And so the reason that I take Establishment here is I have a strong Watcher deck, which has room for 1 or 2 okay cards. And the goal is to scale Protects to be block cards for me, most likely. Like maybe I'll get a Meditate and do some really cool Meditate Establishment stuff, but also I just already have 1 Protect and I can take more, and I can have those cost 0 and just play cards that block for 16. I've got a Kunai as well, so maybe more will happen. And that is sort of like the base case for Establishment here. That is the starting thing that I expected to do. Maybe it has upside. There are some ways that it could potentially become very powerful, but already I think it's okay to be taking just to make Protect cost 0 for longer fights. And we get a Deceive Reality in the Book of Stabbing fight as well, and then another Protect against Sentry and Spirit Guardian. So all of a sudden we have our block engine online. It is Protects and Safeties, which is, you know, fine. It's good enough for now. Not the best way for Watcher to block, but it's the one that we had available. Survive the Collector fight, get a Scrawl, so our turn 1 is absolutely obscene right now. And Darklings beat us up pretty bad, actually. Darklings can do that sometimes. I imagine I was trying to do fancy things with Wish and failing to in this fight. And I got a Weave, so finally I have some sort of 0 cost thing, although this deck isn't incredibly good at recurring Weave. But, you know, it's a card that helps with Kunai. Taking a Wallop on floor 36, because again, I am looking for ways to block, and I'm not necessarily going to get offered a good one, so I need to start thinking about how can I put together something that's good enough. And then a Holt Plus against the Spirit Guardian with Shapes. Again, this card is a good enough block card to win. It is not the most broken block card that Watcher has, but it is a card that you can include in a block engine that's capable of winning the end of the game. We purchased a Talk to the Hand at the store, and now most of the stuff is silly because we have Talk to the Hand Tantrum, so we don't really have to think anymore, and I mean, draw the rest of the Elephant. I actually got a 3rd Protect there, but lost it to the Falling event. Or I got an upgraded one and then lost the unupgraded one to the Falling event, I think. Draw the rest of the Elephant. Dolly's Mirror on Talk to the Hand at the very end as well. So we had 2 Talk to the Hands for the Heart fight. Alright, so awesome. I took 21 damage in the Heart fight, which might look like I was really close to dying, but I'm pretty sure that it was just like, I don't want to block this turn, I want to play, like, Wish for gold or something like that. I wouldn't read too much into that. Ironclad runtime. I didn't get a tremendous amount of Ironclad Exodias in the Ironclad win streak that I had. This is a Corruption Dark Embrace Feel No Pain run. I'd looked at the Watcher run already before recording this video, and I hadn't looked at the other ones yet, so this will be interesting. At 1-0 in our win streak, we take 35 damage from Scrap Ooze and get an Ancient Tea set, so that's like a pretty good start to Act 1, I would say. Although we take 0 damage from all of the hallway fights with Fusion Hammer. So we're not going to get to upgrade at rest sites anyway, we're going to have to rest at them. It's good to be spending our health to get stronger in any way, instead of just like not using our health for anything. So far we have Perfected Strike, Headbutt, True Grit, and Battle Trance. Perfected Strike is one of those cards that suggests an entire deck by itself. There are a few cards like this, like Claw sort of suggests it's an entire deck by itself, Rampage sort of suggests it's an entire deck by itself. Generally speaking, these cards are not an entire deck by themselves. Pressure points for Watcher as well. And if you try to make an entire deck out of them, your deck will be very bad compared to the other things that you could build. Perfected Strike, however, is a perfectly fine damage common for like Act 1 and 2. And I'm not going to say I've never played a run where I killed the heart with 4 of them, because I have, but I would not recommend planning to do that when you take it on floor 1. And taking it on floor 1 doesn't like mean in any way that you are forced to try to do that or anything. Just a good way to kill stuff when your deck as a starting deck only has like Strikes and Bash, which are not good damage cards at all. And Perfected Strike on floor 1 is already dealing 18, right? Because it counts itself, I'm pretty sure. Whatever. 16, 18, whatever. Okay, so kill Gremlin Knob, we get a Disarm. Disarm is a very powerful Ironclad card for like the late game boss and heart fights, but not necessarily incredible until then. So it's like often pretty good in some Act 2 fights as well. It's like okay. If this is Hexaghost or Guardian, yeah, it's like very good against Hexaghost as well. Makes the Hexaghost fight a lot less threatening. So a good card to have. It's sort of like a chase uncommon for late game for Ironclad, which just is okay until then, which puts it in a bit of a weird spot. There aren't that many cards that are like that. Most of the really good uncommons for late game are really good from the second you pick them up all the way through the rest of the game. So Disarm just happens to match up against the late game fights in a very specific way, which makes it really good for them, while only sort of being okay against the enemies that don't have multi-attacks and which aren't going to survive for a great number of turns. You can compare it to Metallicize, and it's like typically about as good as Metallicize in a lot of fights, and then sometimes it's just completely insane. So we rest to 69 health, nice. Get a Molten Egg, sort of a nice one to have with a Fusion Hammer, although you often don't take that many attacks on a run of Slay the Spire, unlike any character. Watcher likes taking attacks a lot, but the other characters all have runs where they don't want attacks very much, because they're like dealing damage with poison or orbs, or in this case we have a lot of skill stuff going on in our Ironclad run. That said, though, we do take another Perfected Strike. This is a Perfected Strike Plus, so we are set up really nicely for Act 2 right now with 2 big attack cards, and because of that Perfected Strike Plus, we don't have to be taking stuff like a Sword Boomerang Plus here and stuff like this. We're sort of okay for a while. Get a Corruption on floor 13. A lot of people ask, like, when's the right time in your run to start taking Corruption if it's offered to you? When's the right time in a fight to play Corruption when you draw it? The answers to both of those questions are that it's very complicated to explain that in detail and have you always be making the right decision, but probably as soon as possible for both is the safe bet. If you get offered this card on floor 2 somehow, probably just take it. Actually really good against Lagavulin for what it's worth. If you draw it in your opening hand, probably just go ahead and play it in pretty much any fight that you're ever in. You have to keep in mind that your skills are only going to get played once in a lot of fights, so you might want to have a few more skills in your Corruption deck, but that's okay because you like have Dark Embrace, so you're drawing them all really fast, and they all cost 0, so they're really good cards, and you have Feel No Pain, so they block for more, and maybe you have Juggernaut, so they kill everything. Yeah, it's just like, it's a good time when you have Corruption. Everything gets better when it costs 0 and procs all of your exhaust synergies. And we get a Fiendfire Plus from Hexaghost, which is fine. Impervious is pretty good here. Barricade's sort of fun here, but the thing that Fiendfire does is it kills elites for us really well, especially consider that we have a Bag of Prep, so we can play it for 60 damage on turn 1 in fights sometimes if we want to. And then when you already have Corruption, you're very close to all sorts of infinites on Ironclad. A really simple one, for example, would be to get a Flash of Steel in your deck and then dual wield it and exhaust all of the other cards and just play Flash of Steel over and over again. You can see later in the run I get an Abacus, so Doing that would give me infinite block and damage, which is pretty sweet. And Fiendfire is one way to exhaust all of the attacks that aren't going to exhaust themselves while you're playing your skills, and those are exhausting. So Impervious and Barricade, both very strong cards. Fiendfire has the mode where it deals very, very, very good damage, which is significant. It's also very good with Snecko Eye, very good with Runic Pyramid, which is nice. Those relics are definitely the relics we're going to want to be picking if they're offered to us, and the fact that this card works really nicely with them is cool. But on top of that, you have the secondary mode of it to consider, where it turns on infinites for your Ironclad deck, which is very, very powerful as well. Ended up taking a Cursed Key. You take Ritual Dagger. It's a Ritual Dagger Plus on floor 19. 20 damage from Shelled Parasite. Thanks. Managed to survive the next 2 hallway fights though. We rest. 0 damage this fight, 0 damage this fight. We're doing okay here. This looks really spooky. 27 damage from Book of Stabbing, putting us on 16. Elixir, strangely a pretty good potion with Ironclad sometimes. Although at this point it looks like I don't have my Feel No Pains and stuff yet. So we're very close to dead here, actually. But we get through the Snake Plant fight, okay. Get through the Slavers fight, okay. Get a Pocket Watch, get a second Disarm for later on. Get another Elixir. Buy a bunch of stuff. Don't die to the question mark. Yay. Rest, beat the champ very, very, very easily. The champ fight is like... if you understand how to manage the champ fight, he doesn't really attack you for very much before he is below half HP. So if you build a deck that's able to defend itself for a while he's above half HP, while scaling into something that will kill him, the champ fight's usually pretty easy. We get Slaver's Color, so we're playing 6 energy Ironclad, although our 6 energy Ironclad isn't that good at blocking, so... Going through this, we do eventually find a Feel No Pain there. We get a Self-Forming Clay and a Duplication Potion from Rithromancer, as well as a Power Through Plus. Very, very, very strong card. Dolly's Mirror, I think it's Feel No Pain here. It's gonna be my guess. Giant Head's not too bad. Bottled Lightning. What I guess Bottled Lightning is on. Either Disarm or Battle Trance. I'm gonna guess. We rest, we fight Nemesis, not too bad. Get a Peace Pipe, which is not going to do much for us, I don't imagine. Giant Head again is pretty easy. We remove Regret, which we sort of have to do after opening the chest for our treasure for our key, rather, with Cursed Key. And then with only 36 health, we managed to beat Donu, Deka, and Time Eater. I bet this run's good to watch. Bought a Flash of Steel at the Merchant, so I'm a little bit more able to take advantage of the Abacus that I have. Shield and Spare go down easily in 5 turns, and the Heart dealt us 66 damage over 11 turns, but did eventually die. It's ended up being a much closer run than I thought it was, looking at the cards that I had in my deck. I think the big thing here is that our relics don't block, and we don't have Reaper. So if you think about our turn 1 and 2, the amount of survivability that our relics are giving us there is approximately 0. If I get beaten up really bad on turn 1, Self-Forming Clay will block on turn 2 for me a little bit. There are lots of relics in the game that are very good at helping you survive turn 1 and 2, and yeah, if you don't have those, you're going to take quite a lot of damage and an awful lot of fights, so that is noticeable there. Silent Time. No relic swap. We got a leg sweep over a Dagger Spray. I think that you can probably get away with that. Though looking at this, I fought an Elite before Campfire, so it's a bit spooky for sure. It used to be really hard to take leg sweep over Dagger Spray on floor 1 because silence damage was just so bad, but since then there have been like 10 different buffs to silent damage. So I think at this point, you're probably able to do that. We got Blade Dance on floor 2, speaking of silent damage buffs. And yeah. Is this actually overlapping with... I've already talked about this run, right? Because this is on the... This is during my Silent World Record streak. I forgot that these had overlap, but yeah, I've definitely already talked about this. We just snowball out of control. We barely ever actually use the jacks that we picked up. And GG. I'm not going to talk about this run a second time. It's a Blade Dance Runic Pyramid run with like Incense Burner and Paper Crane. I don't know that there's really that much to say. So, good run though. We're at 3-0. This is to go 4-0. There is this really cute thing here where my final runs of the month on all 4 characters were wins. I'm pretty sure that my first 4 runs of the month on all 4 characters were losses, so... this wasn't actually the day that I was doing the challenge, but yeah, I began 0-4 for the month and ended at 4-0, so way to go me. Back to our defect run. I am a year away from it. I have played a lot of runs of Slay the Spire, huh? Props to the devs for having me be able to navigate these without it lagging. We get a boot sequence on floor 1 of our defect run. Defects turn 1 is pretty interesting because Bag of Prep is a common and so is Anchor. And if you have Bag of Prep but not Anchor, you really want boot sequence. And if you have Anchor but not Bag of Prep, you really don't want boot sequence. And if you have neither, boot sequence is like okay. It's like so-so. So it always feels like when I take boot sequence, it's like a bit of a... just like a coin flip. Like whether it will end up being good or not. There are varieties of ways to make it better. Like having a hologram in your deck makes it a lot better even if you have Anchor, because even though you don't want to play it turn 1 probably, it will be a 0 cost block 10 in your discard pile for your holograms, which is valuable. Dead Branch obviously makes it better. You can do Gambling Chip and just gamble it away a lot of the time. But Runic Pyramid also it's very good with, although on the other hand it's not as good with Snecko Eye, so you also have the like, if you get Runic Pyramid it's really good, if you get Snecko Eye it's not as good going on. It's just like an okay card right now though, so fine to take it. I think Defect is probably more capable than any of the other 3 characters of taking any strong card on floor 1. Defect has very good damage from Zap and Dualcast. Defect still benefits from lots more damage in Act 1 though, so you can take pretty much any damage card. Defect does not have very much block, so you can take a block card and add it to the Defect deck and it makes perfect sense. Helps against Lagavulin, helps against Sentries. Can even be okay against Gremlin Knob. And also you can start taking the scaling cards on floor 1 as Defect, absolutely. Defect's good scaling cards are so good at scaling that it makes a lot of sense to be taking them on floor 1 to set yourself up for later in the run, in my opinion. And Defect's capable of winning runs without many relics, so you can like take a scaling card and path a safer path through the act. We remove a strike, we don't get anything from Match and Keep it looks like, and we get a Ball Lightning on floor 4, so our damage is good, and our block is okay off of our boot sequence. I went to exactly 36 at Shining Light and then fought an elite fight, which is pretty spooky, but I had Meow's Lament, so I guess it was safe this time. Gremlin Knob, it goes down easy. I guess I didn't reach the Act 1 boss in the previous Defect run, which is interesting. I think this is the first time in all of these win streaks that we've looked at a run where I hadn't reached the Act 1 boss in the run prior, probably. Maybe not, but quite possibly. Meow's Lament only shows up if you failed to reach the Act 1 boss in your previous run on this character, and obviously, other than the first runs of the win streak for each character, we're obviously going to have reached the Act 1 boss because we won the previous run every time. Omnis Forge gives us Warped Tongues, we get a meal ticket, we beat the sentries, and get a gold-plated cables. I also took Go for the Eyes, which is always an interesting card to me. It is an okay card, but it's only okay. There's nowhere that it's really incredible, and it has no real potential of ever being incredible, so you can just take it as a filler card to make your deck a little bit better at this point on the run. But other than maybe clearing artifact charges for weakening bosses late game, it just really doesn't do very much at all. Removed Pain at the Merchant, we get a Cool Headed. Cool Headed is nice, so now we have some lightning and some frost, and a Cold Snap doubles up our frost for us. Got lots of frost going on. Letter Opener and Auto Shields from Lagavulin. Auto Shields is an okay card to have early. Auto Shields is like a good card early even. It becomes mediocre late game, but usually you have other cards that are gonna carry the weight for you late game. It's okay to have some cards in your deck that aren't late game specialists. We upgrade Go for the Eyes for our Guardian fight and get a Fission, so Fission's great. As long as you're good at channeling orbs, Fission is a massive payoff card for doing that. Rewards you very, very, very much for putting cards that generate orbs into your deck. Got a Charge Battery Plus from the birds, so we're doing a pretty good job of blocking right now, but not an incredible job of doing damage, I wouldn't say. Although Defect's damage, if Defect is able to block, ends up being surprisingly fast. Like, all you really need is like one potion to help, and then maybe hit like a Doom and Gloom at some point soon, or an Electrodynamics, and you're never going to have any issues with damage for the entire rest of the run. Skip Leap, Steam Barrier, Claw, seems fine. Get another Cool Headed, seems fine. Get another Cool Headed from the library, so we have a lot of Cool Headeds here. When did I get consumed? Do I have any focus at the moment? Anyway, who knows. Compile Driver helps a little bit with damage leading into Act 2 Elite fights. Not going to be able to take a genetic algorithm in this situation. We're just too likely to die. Although I took a genetic algorithm from the next fight, so look at me. This is after taking only 11 damage from the Slavers fight though, so we're doing a little bit better at this point. Skip the chest because of Cursed Key, don't want the curse. And we only took 3 damage against Book of Stabbing. Where is all of my damage coming from? Did I like miss something? I got Nial's Lament as the whale bonus. I have like an upgraded strike. I have 2 ball lightnings and a whetstone, which would have upgraded some other attacks. I have gold-plated cables, which is making the lightning orb go off multiple times. I have a letter opener. I have Fission. I don't have like any focus though, as far as I can tell. It's sort of crazy. Like, Defect's damage is just really good without you even needing particularly great damage cards. Like, Ball Lightning does so much damage for 1 energy, for example. I'm sure that the Fission led to some pretty huge turns, and then we're pretty good at blocking with our 4 Cool Headeds and Auto Shields and Boot Sequence and stuff. We got a Bias Cognition and a Calipers from the Book of Stabbing fight. Both of those are incredibly, incredibly good rewards. I think Calipers is better on Defect than any other character. It's also very good on Watcher, I guess, but Defect is so good at creating passive block every turn, and not always that good at creating like way more block for really big attack. So if you're against the Heart, which attacks you for 0, 40, or 120, depending on which turn it is, if you're just able to create like 40 to 50 block every turn, with Calipers, you don't need to do much more than that. Calipers is going to get you through. Skipped another chest because of Cursed Key. Cursed Key slows you down a little bit sometimes. Get rid of Regret. Where's Regret from? Oh, I guess I opened this for the blue key. And got rid of the curse there. I'm seeing that a store was coming up and I could easily get rid of the curse. Often you have a little mini game and runs with Cursed Key where you're not getting more than a relic worth of value out of opening a chest, like pretty much ever. Unless you get really lucky on the relic that you hit. And so you have this mini game of like looking for one chest that you can open safely where the curse can't kill you because you have the ability to remove it pretty quickly over the rest of the run. And sometimes you'll be able to do that early, and if we opened this chest and it was a very good relic, I could have taken the relic over the curse, removed the curse, and then opened the chest in Act 3 as well, and hoped that I had some ability to remove that curse later. But like, if I get offered an incense burner, for example, it's definitely worth it to risk ending the run with a pain in my deck or something in order to have that incense burner. Full-headed hologram. We get creative AI from the champ. So one thing this deck doesn't have that much of yet is clear scaling. It's got a bias cognition, which is going to do great for us up until the boss fights, but maybe too slow for the boss fights. Or the boss fights may be too slow for it, is probably what I should say. It's too fast for the boss fights, if anything. The focus down thing is going to matter in a fight that goes more than 5 turns. But with creative AI, we don't have to worry about that nearly as much. Taking a Doom and Gloom on floor 36, we still have to kill Reptomancer potentially in this run, and I don't believe this run had any AoE damage whatsoever prior to picking up this Doom and Gloom, so it's just a pretty good card in lots of situations, and it's only one card to draw if you're in a fight where it's not good, which is not many of them. In most of the fights, it's pretty good. We had to consume on floor 37, so now we have guarantee of the ability to be able to gain permanent focus in fights. We don't have many orb slots, but actually vaguely remember, get a defragment plus there as well. Actually vaguely remember the end of this run just sitting on creative AI waiting for it to make capacitors for me so that I could outscale boss fights. Took 0 damage from Time Eater, took 21 damage from Awakened One. Awakened One often deals you a little bit of damage while you're setting up his defect, but then stops afterwards. Creative AI actually works fine against Awakened One as defect. Your powers scale you faster than they scale Awakened One. And then 0 damage, Shield and Spear, 3 damage, Corrupt Heart. So we got there. We did buy a Clockwork souvenir, very notably, so this relic is going to help our bias cognition be much stronger in the late game fights. Don't remember if I had an artifact potion as well to deal with the heart vulnerable, I guess. I think I might have just drawn bias cog on turn 1 actually, and when I did, I like, yes, I won, was sort of my thinking. So that's 4-0. We've gotten 4. At this point in my career as a Spire player, I start to think about the fact that I'm on a win streak, like at 6 or 7-0. By which I mean I start to... If usually I'm playing a run and I'm like 1/3 focused on learning, 1/3 focused on winning, 1/3 focused on entertaining, as I get further into a win streak, the amount that I am focused on winning increases, and I start doing things like taking longer calculations and not reading chat for 5 minutes while I'm in a particularly difficult fight and stuff like that. I personally don't want input from chat while I'm playing Slay the Spire, like any of the time, but especially while I'm in a win streak. I want a win streak to be my achievement, and so having somebody in chat point out that I was making a mistake and preventing me from making it would make me feel bad, like the achievement wasn't mine anymore. It's only happened one time in all of the win streaks that I've had, fortunately. I think it happened in the run to go 8-0 in my first 9-0 streak, if I remember right. But yeah, like, I mean, the fact that I still remember that and remember fairly precisely when it happened, when that was like over a year ago, tells you both, 1, I don't want that, please, and 2, it doesn't really happen that often, fortunately. But I do like to chat with people while I'm playing Slay the Spire and answer questions and stuff like that, so when I'm really in competitive mode, I might be derelict in those duties as well, even. That said, at 4-0, I still pretty much don't care. I think that focusing in really hard on a run probably raises my win rate like 10% overall. Maybe a little bit more, but my win rate without focusing at all is already like among the best win rates in the world for every character, and that's been true on every character for the entire time that the game has been out. With max difficulty increases. I don't think it was true on Ascension 0 when I first started playing, but I think since Ascension 10 came out, I've consistently been like within 5% of the best win rate in the world on every single character, like all of the time. Depending on if you believe that 95% is a real Watcher win rate or a like sample size thing. I don't know though, like my Watcher win rate right now I think is 90% while not focusing pretty easily. Yeah, I'll amend that and say that's not true for Watcher, but also on the other hand I haven't cared much about Watcher in the course of my career. So the general thing that I'm trying to say is I feel pretty comfortable that I win a lot while vibing, so I don't stop vibing and turn on competitive mode until I'm getting pretty deep into streaks. That's the general thing that I'm trying to say. So I'm still vibing here on Watcher. This is the last run of my month of Spire in January. I'm on 4-0. This is to go to 127 wins, and we just go Crush Joints, Cut Through Fate, Tantrum, Empty Fist, and we already won, as far as I know, about how Watcher runs work. Like, I got a Mental Fortress and a Captain's Wheel on floor 7. This is just absolutely over in every way imaginable. Fear No Evil on floor 11. I probably need to find, like, one more thing to win this entire run. Like one Talk to the Hand in my deck would actually already be good enough for the final fights. If I add relics to it that I'll get over the course of the run too, of course. Eternal Feather and Scroll from Lycovulin. I also picked up an Omniscience by transforming Defend. This deck is just sort of obscene. And a Volt on floor 16. I think this deck at the end of Act 1 has better cards in it than the last Watcher deck I won with had at the end of Act 4. Like, this run is, yeah. And then I get a Black Star, so with Watcher you're very, very capable of killing Act 2 elites as long as you like rest sensibly. So Black Star is a pretty good boss relic to have on Watcher at any point in the run. You'll take it from the Whale, you'll take it at the end of Act 1, and it's fine to take it at the end of Act 2 as well. I'm not talking too much about the rest of this run because I think that at the end of Act 1 it was pretty much already over. I had a lesson learned in my deck for a while and then gave it away to Bonfire Spirits. I actually took 68 damage from the Heart. In a deck with double Omniscience, 3 Mental Fortress, and a lot of stat swapping and a Foresight. That's like impressive that I took that much damage from the Heart. This is why it's nice to have max HP on Watcher, though. If you draw very poorly on turn 2 and 3 of the Heart fight, max HP means it doesn't matter. You still win anyway. Alright, so I took a little bit of a break from Spire, understandably. Took a couple of days off. At this point, I was doing stuff like organizing my chat with Terrence and Baylor Lord about the 3 world record streaks that we had set in January, so I wasn't thinking that much about actually playing Spire. I did a big analysis of my January, like a big write-up, which I posted to like Twitter and Discord and Reddit, which a lot of people really enjoyed reading. You can hunt that down if you are so inclined and want to learn more about how that month went for me. But I did still have Spire to play, of course. At this point, I was in the middle of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I was 7-0 on Silent at this point, which was my personal best at the time, actually. So I still had Spire to play. Sometimes if I'm 7-0 on Silent in a spot like that, I'll just play Silent. a couple of times to like see how the streak ends and then take my week off or whatever. There's an interesting thing going on here where I want to have enough energy to actually focus on runs, so like at the end of a month of play I don't want to wake up the next morning and play again more. But on the other hand, I don't want to like step away from Spire for so long that I lose my edge, my like dial in. There's sort of like this intangible thing where when I'm really dialed in on a character, the decisions which are close, I make them right, and when I'm not, the decisions that are close, I make them wrong. So yeah, like basically what I'm saying is that if I'm like warmed up and well practiced on a character, I perform better on it, which, you know, makes perfect sense, right? This is one of the premises of the rotating world record streak being so impressive, is that you have to be performing on all 4 characters at the same time. You can't dedicate all of your mental space and energy to dialing in all the way on one character and then playing it. So anyway, floor 1, Louse deals us 0 damage, and I took Headbutt over Twin Strike on Ironclad with Snecko-Eye as my starting boss swap relic. So I would typically take Twin Strike here. Headbutt is not a very helpful card for most Ironclad decks, in my opinion. There are just not very many Ironclad decks that really want that card. Most of Ironclad's really good cards are powers or have exhaust written on them. The like biggest exception I would say is Entrench. If you're playing a barricade deck, Headbutt can be really nice to play Entrench more often, and Limit Break. If you have an upgraded Limit Break and that's how your deck is scaling, it can be really nice to be able to play that more often with Headbutt. But other than those 2 cards, I think most Ironclad decks just don't really benefit from putting a card in their discard pile on top of their draw pile very often. Battle Trance is maybe a third one to mention. But other than Battle Trance, Limit Break, Entrench, Aqueducts, Roads, what has Headbutt done for us? So anyway, in this situation with Snecko-Eye, on the other hand, if I get like 1 Flame Barrier or Bludgeon or something like that, all of a sudden Snecko-Eye makes the distance between those cards in strength and the rest of the cards in your deck in strength so much greater, because every card in your deck costs on average 1.5, you know. It has a uniform distribution of cost between 0 and 3, and so some of those deal 6 damage to 1 enemy for 0 to 3 energy, and some of them deal 32 damage to 1 enemy for 0 to 3 energy. And it's easy to see why the one that deals 32 is a lot better. So yeah, with Snecko-Eye we're taking Headbutt. Golden Idol, Shockwave very early over Heavy Blade. I think that this is a little bit close, but like not that close. Heavy Blade is not only bad without strength, but it's also quite often pretty bad with strength. Just like, I don't know. It looks like that would be good if you had access to strength, but the problem is that on turn 1, you often don't have your strength yet. So it's an attack that doesn't work on turn 1, which isn't... Like, turn 1's one of the most important moments for your attacks to work in most of the fights in the game. Even in the Awakened One fight, in the Act 4 Elite fight, sometimes you want your attacks to work on turn 1. And then if you're scaling strength as Ironclad, the attacks that I would say that you really want are Reaper and Reaper. I think that for the most part, the other attacks don't matter very much. If you really need strength scaling, which happens sometimes if you have a deck that can get like between 10 and 20 strength exactly, you might want some strength scaling to actually make sure you could deal 200 damage a turn to the heart, for example. Sword Boomerang actually scales off strength at a better rate per energy than Heavy Blade does anyway. Plus it's a better card in Act 1 with no strength. It deals 9 for 1 instead of 14 for 2. So if you're in that sort of situation, you know, Sword Boomerang. There's also like Dropkick, Anger, Flash of Steel. There are lots of ways to get good strength scaling per energy out of attacks that are much better at it than Heavy Blade. Heavy Blade gives you good damage per card when you have lots of strength, but that ends up not being that big a deal most of the time, I would say. And also, like, something like Whirlwind gives you better damage per card anyway. Okay, so that all having been said, in this run, Heavy Blade doesn't cost 2, it costs between 0 and 3, so it's an okay card to be taking on floor 3, but Shockwave is just fairly premium. So, okay to be taking Shockwave there. Take a True Grit, get a block card into the deck, seems fine. We upgrade Bash, we get a Bag of Prep, and an Armaments. Armaments is like okay when you draw lots of cards or when you have specific cards that you'd really like to upgrade. I don't think it's insanely good here, but it would be actually a decent upgrade at the moment, in my opinion. I think that a lot of people assume that you take Armaments and you just immediately upgrade it, because it changes from upgrading one card in your hand to upgrading all of the cards in your hand for the rest of combat. I think that in almost every hallway and elite fight in the game, Armaments Plus is not better than Armaments to an amount that justifies using a campfire on it. It's like the only place that this is justifiable, in my opinion, is some of the boss fights. Pretty much. Anyway, in general, I don't recommend prioritizing your Armaments upgrade, but in this situation, drawing so many cards, sometimes it will be nice to have an Armaments Plus. We get a Sever Soul, just a big damage card. We get an Immolate, another very big damage card. We get Wing Boots here, so we're able to take lots of elites in Act 2 if we want. Dark Embrace is nice. We're always taking Corruption with Ironclad pretty much all the time, but especially with Snecko Eye, we're always taking Corruption, so Dark Embrace is going to be very good if we hit that Corruption, and also just pretty good all the rest of the time. About a third of Ironclad cards have Exhaust written on them in some manner. And then we get Reaper from Hexaghost. So this is just a 4 energy Snecko Eye Reaper deck going into Act 2 with a Bag of Prep. We don't have good defensive relics, but I'm not sure that we need to talk too much more about this run. If you are struggling to win Ironclad runs where you have Snecko Eye, 4 energy, and a Reaper at the end of Act 1, my recommendation would be to watch the other things that I say about Ironclad probably, and that'll probably get you there, because the things that are generally true about Ironclad are still true, it's just you're playing on 15 lower difficulties effectively because of how strong you are leaving Act 1. So, as long as you do reasonable things here, you should do pretty well. How do I get strength there? Because I noticed that I go from 37 health to 96 health. But I also noticed that all I have is a Flex Plus for strength in the deck. I'm confused. This deck ended up being pretty weird, actually, because it ends up being double fire breathing as a very large amount of its damage. Take 102 damage from a weakened one. I'm still not sure how I full heal Death Darklings. Jorbs has some impressive secrets. I guess I could check the VOD. These are all up on YouTube if you want to watch the runs in full. Purchased orange pellets and Flex Plus on floor 54, which is pretty funny. I'm so struggling for strength here that I actually commit to removing the Snecko Eye debuff from me, which is whatever. It doesn't matter that much in this deck, the Snecko Eye debuff. Usually it's a positive, the Snecko Eye debuff. But this deck doesn't have a ton of expensive cards, really. Plus it has pretty decent energy with 4 energy. Blood for Blood's gonna cost 0 anyway. Corruption's gonna make every skill cost 0 anyway. But yeah, I take orange pellets and Flex Plus so I can play Flex Plus and then remove the debuff to keep my 4 strength. And that's my big plan here for having strength scaling for the heart. I imagine that with 108 max HP, there were not many reasons to be all that concerned in actuality. Just need to play any block cards at all with corruption while dealing damage. And the deck's pretty decent at dealing damage. Alright, cool. We're back on Silent. At this point, we are at 6-0. And this run is a Runic Pyramid Grand Finale run, which is pretty awesome. So we started with Quick Slash, Blade Dance, removed a Strike, another Quick Slash, so we're getting damage into our deck, which doesn't prevent our deck's acceleration from working. Silent's very good at accelerating with cards like Calculated Gamble to let her put her important powers and stuff into play early on in fights. So Quick Slash is a card that helps you deal damage against elites, because Silent sucks at dealing damage on floor 0, but also doesn't get too much in the way of accelerating your deck later on in the run, which is one of the strongest things about Silent, is really nice. And then it makes it a lot easier to feel good about buying Apotheosis at this store. We took extra gold from the whale, by the way, as our bonus. It makes us feel better about taking Apotheosis in this store. The fact that we have a couple of Quick Slashes, we're better at drawing toward it quickly. And I assume we upgrade it. Yep. No problems against Lagavulin. Taking a Phantasmal Killer. Phantasmal Killer used to cost 1 more energy than it does now. It costs 0 when upgraded. And this has made the card a lot better. And also just made attack-based damage a lot better. The energy reduction on Phantasmal Killer is a very significant contributor to, I would say, most Silent runs now are favoring winning the run using attack-based damage instead of poison-based damage. Upgrade on Wellblade plans is cool. We get a Lizard Tail. I just remembered that I've actually looked at this run in the Silent streak, haven't I? Because this is the run where I had 2 upgraded Wellblade plans and then took Runic Pyramid after beating Hexaghost. Right. Yeah. Well, I've already talked about this one. Very good maximization of acts, ends up being a pretty strong deck, and we win quite easily. Check out the Silent World Record streak that I talked through if you want to see that in more detail and hear more about my general thoughts about Silent. Defect. Starting with Doom and Gloom on Defect is so good. I just feel so strong when I start runs with Doom and Gloom on Defect. It's like, at the start of a run on Defect, I'm expecting to have to bloat my deck to be strong enough to beat Act 1 and 2, and then thin my deck with like card removes, but also with like effectively thinning my deck with card draw and relics that draw cards and stuff like that, in order to be able to accelerate my scaling for the end of Act 3 and Act 4. So those are the 2 things I'm expecting to do: bloat my deck, and then effectively shrink my deck to make it easier to draw and play my scaling cards. And when I get a Doom and Gloom on floor 1, it's like, okay, my deck is already almost set for dealing damage to Act 1 and Act 2 enemies, just with the Doom and Gloom only, and all I had to do was add 1 card. It's such a good start to a run. It just puts you in such a strong place to continue. The Capacitor from Match and Keep, which is awesome as well. I'm not quite at a point where I take stack on floor 4 with Defect yet, but I get closer every day that I play Defect. I think stack's a really good card. But yeah, reasonable to not be taking it on a floor 4 when your deck just doesn't have many cards in it. Melter. Why did I take Melter over Rip and Tear here, I wonder? I'm not 100% sure why I took Melter over Rip and Tear here. They're both okay for the thing that they're trying to do. I think Melter is like slightly better against Lagavulin, maybe, and clearly better against Sentries. Is it Slime Boss, not Guardian? So that's not the reason. Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate Melter or Rip and Tear here. Both of them are much better than skipping. I'm just trying to work out why I took the one that deals 4 less damage at a point in the run where dealing damage is so premium, and I'm not sure I could tell you exactly. Other than that, targeting the damage at the sentry that you want to kill first is valuable, and Melter can do that, and Rip and Tear Cat. I guess coupled with the fact that Doom and Gloom is AoE damage. Yeah, I don't know. We upgrade Doom and Gloom. We get a Pair and Cool-Headed. So there's our first Frost Orb. Taking Cool-Headed over Chill, which I think is okay. The problem with Chill here is it's probably an immediately better card, but the fact that it exhausts means that it doesn't guarantee yet that in Act 3 and 4 I can make more than one Frost Orb. And Cool-Headed does guarantee that I can make more than one Frost Orb, and there is a semi-significant, there's a semi-significant percentage of runs on Defect where one Cool-Headed is enough to block for the late game stuff, and one Chill isn't. And you have to do a lot of work to get there if you don't have that one Cool-Headed. Like, basically, if you have like 15 focus plus a hologram, Cool-Headed is just about enough by itself. Add an Echo form in there, maybe. And I'm not sure that Chill can quite say the same. But we get a Cold Snap on the very next floor, so probably at this point already I'd rather have the Chill, but regardless. They're like comparably decent cards, I would say. You're paying 1 energy to draw a card, and your card is worse in AoE fights. Maybe I meant to take Chill there. Could go either way. The Melter and Rip and Tear decision was sort of close, and the Chill and Cool-Headed decision sort of close so far. So definitely not at a point where I have strong codified opinions about exactly how everyone should play Slay the Spire, which is just true of me as a player of games forever. I never am going to solidify and commit to very specific opinions about everything in the game, because I think that that is the death of my improvement as a player, pretty much. And I would like to keep improving as a player, so it's important to me to keep the idea that lots of different things might be right, even if when I'm actually in a run, I have to make a decision, and I'm going to choose the thing that I think is right at the moment. I'm just not the sort of person who's going to, as I'm playing through a run, say that I think that every decision that I make is correct or anything like that. Obviously, as I'm playing the run, I do think that the decisions that I'm making, unless I'm making mistakes, but obviously I generally think the decisions I'm making as I play the run are correct. It's just I've played enough Slay the Spire to know that a week later I might change my mind, or a day later I might change my mind, or a month later I might change my mind. A year later I will almost certainly have changed my mind, so yeah. Ambassador upgrade, we get Turnip, Bias Cog, Weak Potion from Gremlin Knob. Cool. I like runs where I have Bias Cog and Doom and Gloom early. These are pretty good. So with upgraded Bias Cog already, and we get a Core Surge, so we can try to match that with the Bias Cog to prevent the debuff happening. And double Frost Orb, and the Doom and Gloom on floor 1. Basically in this run we never have to take stuff that doesn't contribute to our ability to scale with orbs, which is awesome. It just makes it very, very, very easy to have a full, dedicated, strong Defect deck as we end the run. And if you look at this deck, at the end of the run it's 41 cards, so it's not like I'm saying that I am going to skip every card from now on. It's just Defect has an absolute incredible abundance of cards that help you to get your scaling into play. All of these Cool-Headeds, Hologram working super well with Equilibrium a lot of the time, and working with everything else too. Reinforced Body, great block card. Stack, really nice block card if you're playing a large deck. Cards like Steam Barrier are fine when you have enough card draw. And what these cards do is they let us have a deck with a critical mass of things like Loop and Capacitor and Biased Cognition and Echo Form without causing us to take a bunch of damage on turn 1 and 2 of really any fight. because we're gonna draw a deck. We're gonna draw a hand which is strong enough to block well against incoming attacks, and also can scale a little bit. And then the next turn we're gonna do the same thing, and the next turn we're gonna do the same thing, and by the end of a few turns we're going to be impossibly strong and just killing the enemies without even really thinking about it. Took 39 damage against Chosen Flock despite having Doom and Gloom, which is rough, but then I got Necronomicon on the next floor, so that won't be happening again. With our Doom and Gloom plus that is playing twice when we play it, we are in good shape. Taskmaster dies, we get an Incense Burner. The Joust. I won the gamble in the Joust, look at that. The Joust is interesting because the Joust is a really good example, actually, of people measuring the wrong thing and then feeling very confident that they now understand the truth after they've measured the wrong thing. Which is something that games like this are sort of plagued by. It's so easy to think that the question you're asking is simple and answer it, and then think that the answer you got is right, when the question that you need to be asking is actually much more complicated than what you realize. So the thing about the Joust is you wager 50 gold, and you can win 100 gold or 250 gold, and let's look up the exact text of the event so I get the exact numbers for you. You have a 70% chance of winning 100 gold off your 50 gold bet, or a 30% chance of winning 250 gold off your 50 gold bet. And so when people see that, a lot of people are like, haha, I am a clever mathematician and I understand how to calculate expected value. All I have to do is multiply 100 by 0.7, the chance that I will win it, and get that that option has a value of 70. Then I can multiply 250 by 0.3, the chance of getting 250, realize that that option has a value of 75. 75 is larger than 70, so the right way to play this floor is to go for the 75 gold. Go for the 75 gold value option, which is to try to get 250 gold, I mean. Which is wrong. I mean, it's right. Everything that was said up until the part where it's the right choice was right, sort of. A huge, significant mistake that people are making is expected value measures value. And in Slay the Spire, value is your chance to win the run going up. If I have 90% chance to win the run from here, that is a higher value situation than if I have 85% chance to win the run. And all value calculations in Slay the Spire relate to your chance to win, because that is your reward. The thing that you are prioritizing, the thing that you are valuing is winning the run. If you're talking about playing Spire competitively and trying to win the run, at least. Gold does not have a linear relationship in any way to your chance to win. Gold is a different thing which relates in some ways to your chance to win, but doesn't have a clear relationship like that. So, for example, say you go to a store and there is an incense burner in it, but you cannot afford the incense burner. When that happens, your chance to win goes down relative to what would have happened if you could afford the incense burner. If you could afford the incense burner, you would buy it, and your chance to win would go up, probably. So, when you look at the Joust, if the option to win 100 gold gives you enough gold to buy incense burner, and the next floor is a store with incense burner in it, you definitely want to be going for the 100 gold there. And this is just generally true of the Joust. The way that you need to be thinking about this event is gold has breakpoints in value. If you have enough gold to go to a store and buy like the best thing and the second best thing, that's a really good amount of gold to have as you're going through your run. If you also have enough gold to buy the third best thing, that extra gold that you had to let you buy the third best thing is not as valuable as the gold that was required to buy the first and second best things. This is called marginal utility, is the general concept. And marginal utility is the idea that increasing the amount of something that you have doesn't necessarily increase the value that it gives you at the same rate. It could increase the value, well, it could just increase the value linearly. It's possible. It could just be that gold equals utility, and that's the function describing how much value you get out of gold. But it could also be that as you get gold, its utility raises exponentially or falls off. Or it could be like a sine wave where gold goes up and down. For example, if you're on a surfboard, then the value of standing up to try to catch a wave goes up as the wave gets close, and then goes down as it goes away, over and over again. It doesn't go up linearly with time or anything. So, anyway, all this stuff being said, I got 250 gold from the joust, which is nice. Cool. This was a situation where if I hadn't won the joust, I still would have had 350 gold. So in this situation, my feeling was that the 0.3 chance of having 600 gold was better than the 0.7 chance of having 450 gold, which are the two things that I'm choosing between. Anyway, we go to our treasure chest, get a happy flower, survive the parasite and fungi beast fight. We're at 9 health right now. Monka S. Survive triple cultists fight. We are at 9 health now. Still. This is spooky. And we go to floor 29. There's an event here, and we get bites. I think I may have spoken about bites briefly on Defect, but because Defect is so good at generating passive block, Defect can outscale fights in a way that Defect becomes completely invincible for the rest of the fight. And I'm not just talking about hallway fights either. This is true of like the Nemesis Elite fight, the Giant Head Elite fight. Defect can outscale those fights to become invulnerable in them. Time Eater, Awakened One. Donu Deka if you kill Donu. Honestly, you can leave Donu alive and be invulnerable in that fight for a very long time. And so, because of that, bites are capable of full healing Defect a lot of the time. So bites can be very, very, very powerful in Defect for sure. One argument for removing Defend over Strike on Defect is how much you want to take the bite event. Also, just an argument for not removing your basics as aggressively in general is that you want to take the bites event. Anyway, we have bites now, which means that we go from 9 HP on that floor to 33 HP at the end of the Centurion and Mystic fight, which is really nice. I get a potion off the Knowing Skull to set me up for the boss fight. Figured it was worth 6 health there. We rest before Collector and get through Collector, get Echo Form. And now with Echo Form, plus the ability to make a lot of block, plus the ability to make a lot of focus, plus a bunch of bites, plus a Pandora's Box, which in this case gave us Fusion, Meteor Strike, Steam Barrier, and Hologram. Pretty sure that I played that Meteor Strike multiple times in this run for what it's worth. At this point, we're like pretty safe. Take a bunch of damage from Darklings, but like our health is full 3 fights later anyway. Reptimancer is a full heal for us. And yeah. This is the only way that we win here. The only way that we lose here, rather, basically, is getting one-shot by the heart on turn 2 and 3. So the big things are making sure that Incense Burner goes on a good number for both the Act 4 Elite fight and the heart fight, and making sure that we have enough health to survive turn 2 and 3. So buying the weak potion and the waffle is like very deliberate there. These are 2 things that help us survive turn 2 and 3 against the heart guaranteed. Anyway, shield and spare is no problem. Heart is no problem in the end. Delta's 58 damage over the course of the fight, but we actually end at 52 out of 70 health. And that is our Defect run out of the way. So that's 8-0 now, which means I'm 3 away from my 11-0. I believe it was at this point that I had Baylor and Terrence on to chat about our world record streak. So I was sitting on an 8-0 as I had that conversation with them. Honestly, at like this point in my career, an 8-0 isn't that significant for me. Like, yeah, I'm starting to think about winning at this point for sure, but I went 9-0 3 times before going 10-0. So, like, I've been up here before, quite a lot. This is not ground that is particularly foreign to me. And I also just, like, feel very comfortable in my play, so I'm not generally too worried about it all. So, watch your run. We take Wallop over Sands of Time and Third Eye on floor 1. I think all 3 of these cards are good additions to our floor 1 deck. Wallop's, like, a little bit better against the elites in this act, probably, so it makes sense to take. Has some potential to do cool things later. I think Sands of Time also has cool things it can do later. So does Third Eye. All of Watcher's cards are like good now, plus have potential later. This character is crazy strong. Took a Carve Reality off Small Slimes. Slime Boss. I'm like almost surprised I took that over Cut Through Fate, but it's a perfectly fine card for sure. Transform Strike into Far Influence. We get a Mental Fortress over Fear No Evil. I think that's an interesting pick. Because taking Mental Fortress over Fear No Evil with no stance swapping very clearly signals to anybody who's looking at this run history that my belief about Watcher is that like every run should try to make stance swapping a priority. I am not taking Mental Fortress over Fear No Evil here if I think that Watcher regularly wins by scaling off of Scry, Weave, Nirvana, and Talk to the Hand with no stance swapping, or if I think that Watcher regularly wins by playing Pressure Points or Omega or something like that. The thing is, like, yeah, pretty much every Watcher deck is going to want stance swapping, so that is my opinion. I already have a good amount of damage with Wallop and Carve Reality, so I'm not too worried about not having enough damage for fights. And Mental Fortress is one of those, like, this card wins the run for you types of cards, where if you can afford to be taking it on Act 1, I think it's very worth doing. It's also a scaling card which is fast. There are some scaling cards which don't do anything until a turn or 2 after you play them. Mental Fortress can pretty easily make like 18 block for you the turn that you play it. So, card's very good. 5 damage for Letter Opener is a good trade. You get Lantern and Deus Ex Machina off of Lagavulin. Deus Ex is a pretty sweet card. It's one of the reasons that Watcher doesn't need to worry too much about taking energy from boss relics ever. This rare is just pretty good at making you energy. It's much more controlled than something like Seeing Red for Ironclad or Concentrate for Silent, where those cards are also capable of making you energy, but they don't make you as much energy, and also they don't give you energy in the form of miracles that have Retain. So the miracles with Retain let you use the energy whenever you want to. The only problem with Deus Ex is that if you have Scrawl in your deck, you really want to draw Deus Ex before you draw the Scrawl, because if you play Scrawl and draw Deus Ex, you're only going to get 1 miracle out of it, and the other miracles are going to go into your discard pile. On the other hand, if you draw Deus Ex before Scrawl, you get to play all of the miracles, play Scrawl, and have an absolutely gargantuan turn. So that's never been to the point where I've bothered to bottle a Deus Ex, but it's definitely something that you notice when you're playing a deck with both Scrawl and Deus Ex, which is fairly common, because if you, like, you're almost always taking Scrawl if it's offered. So if you take a Deus Ex and then get offered a Scrawl, you're going to be in that situation. Took a Bowling Bash over an Indignation. Indignation would be a second way into Wrath, which is nice, especially with Mental Fortress already, but Bowling Bash is a very premium attack. It just solves a lot of our problems for the next act and a half by itself. So yeah, you know, we're gonna almost certainly see other ways into Wrath, and Bowling Bash is a card that I increasingly want to have one of in every single Watcher run that I play. Bowling Bash is almost like Doom and Gloom in that it's like a one-card solution to problems that could take a lot of work to solve if you don't see a Bowling Bash. Except it's also common, so in a very large number of runs you get a chance to just solve those problems with Bowling Bash. Oddly Smooth Stone, cool. Omamori, fine. Beat a Slaver. Got an Empty Mind, so starting to get our stat swapping online. Didn't take a Weave with no Scry yet. I do think Weave is a very strong card though. Take a Deceive Reality off of Gremlin Knob. This is a situation where the deck's like a little bit slow. When the deck is a little bit slow, needs a little bit of help, but has enough damage already, I very much like to take block cards to help it, you know, stay alive until things start happening for it. Deceive Reality also scales nicely with Oddly Smooth Stone. I think that Spirit Shield is one of the least exciting Watcher rares. I'm not sure that Spirit Shield is better than Protect, which is another 2-cost card that does nothing other than block. In fact, the last time I was offered both of them in the same card pick, I took the Protect. So, yeah, sorry Spirit Shield. Wave of the Hand, another one where like, yeah, good defensive card, but awkward. Sort of comes into its own much later in the run. There you go. There's me taking a Protect over Wave of the Hand right after not taking a Spirit Shield, so. We upgrade Empty Mind, we get a Wish off of Slime Boss. Is basically the only option. We're not going to try to make Alpha, Beta, Omega work as a damage source in this run, and Master Reality is about as much of a brick as you can find on Watcher. Unless you have a dead branch, you're very seldom going to be wanting a Master Reality. Take a Cursed Key at the end of Act 1, which is not a great hit, really. That implies that the other relics were pretty bad. If we're looking at like Snecko-Eye Choker here, I actually take the Curse Key for what it's worth. I do not think Snecko-Eye is particularly good on Watcher. I think it's actively bad. The reason that Snecko-Eye just doesn't appeal on Watcher is that Flurry of Blows is so insane. Also, so much of your deck is about playing Calm and Wrath cards so often, and they are energy neutral without Snecko-Eye. With Snecko-Eye, they lose you half an energy for each card you play, on average. So, yeah, Snecko-Eye really hurts Watcher's most easily accessible game-winning synergy package, basically. And if you try to play a Watcher in with Snecko-Eye, you certainly can win. Watcher has lots of rares and uncommons that are very, very good with Snecko-Eye, but you're committing yourself to finding those rares and uncommons, which is a lot harder than just finding commons and a couple of uncommons to support them. Chosen dies, Muggers die, another Empty Mind, a Foresight, we gotta Talk to the Hand, transform into Talk to the Hand and a Like Water, and then immediately get a Meditate. This deck's getting really, really, really strong for what it's worth. This deck is basically at draw the rest of the elephant already. Man, that's a store and a half. Had 943 gold, largely off of Mawbank already, and a career. So we get Melange, Pocket Watch, Strawberry, Damaru, Bronze Scales, and Fasting. All pretty solid stuff. Okay, skip a chest, get another Like Water with Meditate, and now a second Meditate, in fact. Like Water is a pretty solid card. Helps us out with our blocking. At this point, I do take a Wave of the Hand for late game stuff. Wave of the Hand sort of continually gets better as we go further and further into late game. I took Prey to combo with Damaru. This is a deck with Wallops. It doesn't have that much stat swapping for the Mental Fortress that we took, and it doesn't have Talk to the Hand. And so when we're thinking about how we're going to block and deal damage, this is a situation where I think for the first time in all of the Watcher runs that I've looked at, going Divine actually makes quite a lot of sense. We haven't gotten a Flurry of Blows, we haven't gotten a Tantrum. Even if we did get them, we don't have a Talk to the Hand yet, and we have 2 Like Waters that we're trying to block with. So the idea here is that we can use Prey, Damaru, our double Meditate, and like Wallop or some other big attack that doesn't block for us in order to create our late game damage. And this works fine. You don't have to like start the run taking divinity cards in order to end the run with the ability to go Divine enough to kill enemies. Really all we need is that one Prey and it works fine. Here's our Recall. Didn't take Indignation here. A little bit surprised that I didn't take Indignation with double Mental Fortress plus. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't take that. This, I think, hits Mental Fortress, unless it hits Wallop. Probably hits Mental Fortress. This Dolly's Mirror, I mean. I also removed Fasting, because that just didn't end up being it in this run. We get a Bag of Preparation and a Talk to the Hand from the Shield and Spear, which helps us out quite a lot in the heart fight, I imagine. Although, it ends up being not too bad. Ended it with 42 health left. I actually had 2 Talk to the Hands. I got a Talk to the Hand, like, where, like, I transformed into it there. I never bothered to upgrade it. This deck just didn't hit with attacks that often. It's a bit unique in terms of the Watcher decks that I've been looking at in all of these win streaks. Alright, so that's 9-0. Here's my chance to go 10-0 for the second time in my life. It's an Ironclad run. And I actually didn't Boss Relic swap an Ironclad in this run. I had been moving away from Boss Relic swapping every time on Ironclad over the course of the month of play. And I think I just talked to Terrence and Baylor, and they both were pretty happy with not Boss Relic swapping, and I sort of believed them, especially since my experiences were moving me more toward not wanting to Boss Relic swap anyway. So, you know, the reason to Boss Relic swap on Ironclad is that if you get a 4th energy or a Snecko Eye, Ironclad's pretty good at utilizing that to just very easily win the run. But see, I was clever, and I didn't Boss Relic swap and just got Snecko Eye at the end of Act 1 instead. So I got a Mummified Hand from the Whale instead of the Boss Relic swap too, which is like, I mean, that's pretty obscene. That's a very, very, very powerful relic to have immediately. So with the Mummified Hand, I did not take Dark Embrace. Another thing that's funny about this run is Baylor had been talking at length about how much he loved Dark Embrace and would take Dark Embrace like in Act 1 while we were talking about our win streaks. And I get offered Dark Embrace, I think, like 4 times in Act 1 or something here. And I wanted to take it like pretty much every time, but there's just something more important to take. Like, I think Pommel Strike is just very important to add to the deck here to have enough damage for Act 1 elites. Wild Strike, similarly, now our damage is doing pretty well. I decided to go for a Fire Breathing with Wild Strike in the deck already. Fire Breathing's quite good against Sentries, it is quite good against Hexaghost, who is the Act boss, and with Wild Strike already, we can end up in some sort of deck where Fire Breathing's making use of the statuses that we're making on our own, potentially. Although we don't have to build a deck that centers around Fire Breathing for late game damage by any stretch of the imagination. It's just like a pretty good card in the Sentries fight, the Act 1 boss fight that we rolled. It's also pretty good against Slavers, a little bit slow, but okay. And it's actually okay against Book of Stabbing too. So there's plenty of stuff ahead where Fire Breathing is okay to good. And it's just a 1-cost power, so it's not a huge commitment or anything for something that potentially can do quite a lot of damage. If you draw this on turn 1 of the Act 4 Elite fight, if it's upgraded, like, you expect to be dealing like 40 with it, 50 AoE damage. So even if we do not work in any way to synergize our deck, this is going to be an okay damage card for the entire run. And if we do synergize our deck with it, it could have upside further. Yeah, I ended up taking Disarm over Dark Embrace the second time. Disarm, I think, just a little bit too strong of a card for late game, plus with Hexaghost coming up, it does good things against Hexaghost too. Created a Bash. Wait, what the... Oh, I didn't get Mummified Hand from the Whale. I thought I did. What did I get from the Whale? Well, now I'm confused. Makes more sense that I hadn't taken Dark Embrace yet. Anyway, this is the 3rd time that I get offered Dark Embrace in the Act, and this is after I get Mummified Hand. So yeah, I take it over Clash and Pummel, which are just not super exciting cards here. Pummel's not terrible either, it's just not good. Go ahead and upgrade the Dark Embrace immediately. Get a Whetstone for a couple of upgrades. 2 strike upgrades, it looks like. And then with Dark Embrace already in the deck, Second Wind is a pretty powerful card. Especially coupled with Power Through, Second Wind is actually obscenely powerful. So exhaust all non-attack cards in your hand, gain 5 block for each card exhausted. Couple that with Power Through. We play our Power Through, we get 2 wounds, we play Second Wind, it exhausts the wounds give us a bunch of block. When the wounds give us a bunch of block, they proc our Dark Embrace and we draw a bunch of cards, they proc our Feel No Pain, we get a bunch of extra block. This is a fairly easily accessible late game engine that's capable of killing bosses for Ironclad if you just put that together. Like just a couple of Power Throughs, a couple of Second Winds, a Dark Embrace and 2 Feel No Pains, and get the other cards in the deck out of the way somehow. This run has 3 Exhumes and 3 feeds, by the way, so weird stuff's gonna happen pretty soon. Alright, so we get Golden Idol, Arc Alchem, and Shockwave. We take Combust against Large Slime. It's also just sustained damage against Hexaghost, which is nice. Skip Bludgeon for Evolve, so we're leaning a little bit more into potentially some sort of status type, fire breathing type damage package. Upgrade the fire breathing against Hexaghost, kill it easily and take a Reaper. And take Snecko Eye. And yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, we've mostly won. But, well, the Spot Weakness Plus on the next floor certainly helps us win with our Reaper and Snecko Eye. Get another Strength from the store and a Clothesline. We take 30 damage in this fight and end it 16 health higher than we started it, so do the math on that one. And get a Blood for Blood, which is an excellent attack, especially when coupled with Snecko Eye. Armaments is like okay. I actually take damage from Forgotten Altar for max HP, which is fine. We take 49 damage, which is actually 2 damage against the Slavers fight. Skip all of these cards, but get an Ink Bottle, which is great. Here's our first Feel No Pain. Flex Potion pretty good when you have a Reaper in your deck. Took a Feel No Pain over Flame Barrier Plus, which I could see this going either way here without Mummified Hand, but with Mummified Hand I think Feel No Pain is pretty clearly going to be better, especially when you already have Second Wind, Power Through going on, and Dark Embrace for that matter. Ocean Belt's always really nice because it allows you to turn what will typically be a pretty easy lead up in Act 3 toward the Act 3 bosses into significantly more safety for the boss fights. You just, when you have 4 potions, you have so much more room to draw poorly in those fights. Bird-Faced Iron is great, especially with Mummified Hand. We get the Colosseum, which heals us for 34. Colosseum heals us for 34. And gives us 2 relics, Power Through, and a Distilled Chaos, and 125 gold. So this is a good floor. This is one of the reasons to be going to question marks in the second half of Act 2. It used to be... The Colosseum used to have 2 Gremlin Knobs instead of Taskmaster and Gremlin Knob. And there was this awkward user interface element going on there where Gremlin Knob vulnerables you, so it was the only fight in the game where an enemy that could vulnerable you acted before a different enemy, which meant it was the only fight in the game where the amounts of damage that it said enemies were attacking you for might be wrong. So it got changed, perhaps because of that, and also because lots of people thought that the Colosseum was just a really dangerous floor. And, like, it's one of several examples in the history of Slay the Spire of people who are not playing the game at the highest level giving feedback on the balance of something that is high risk, high reward, and saying that they're seeing the high risk part of it and not getting the rewards, so it needs to be buffed. And then, you know, the risk is lowered on it, but the reward stays the same, and the balance of the game completely breaks when you're playing it at a high level. Yeah. Which is unfortunate for people who are, like, trying to play the game and have it be very challenging and stuff. The Colosseum just ends up being a very, very, very safe floor with just completely disproportionate rewards involved in beating it. But it is what it is, you know? You know. A Paper Frog and an Exhume. Exhume not as good with Snecko and no corruption, but you know, we always might get a corruption, and also we already have Reaper plus strength, so it doesn't really matter if it costs 3. The value of just hitting a Reaper when you have strength is so high. Dual Wield. Dual Wield, often a very good Snecko card, just without any other interactions, because you'll like draw your bludgeon and it will cost 1, and then your dual wield will cost 0, and you will suddenly deal 3 times as much damage because you'll make 2 copies of bludgeon. But when you have a mummified hand, so any power you duplicate like makes cards in your hand cost 0, and you have the ability for powers to start off costing 0 too, because Snecko might roll them to 0, and you have a Reaper, so you know, you can potentially get a Reaper from your dual wield. In that situation, it goes from being very, very good to being obscenely good. I think it's a card that's easy to undervalue with Snecko because it's not that insane without Snecko, but the way that it lines up with what Snecko does is so strong. It's like a card that's a 2-card combo thing where you have to draw it with a power or attack that you want to hit. And so the fact that Snecko makes your hand 7 cards each turn instead of 5 makes it much, much, much more likely to work to begin with. And then on top of that, Snecko can make stuff cost 0, which makes it even more obscene to be duplicating it. It just ends up being very, very powerful when you have it with Snecko. Try it out if you haven't. We get a Carnage Plus, which is just a good attack. Upgrade a True Grit, and we get Feed from the Champ. And this is going to be a pretty obscene Pandora's Box. We get Barricade, Berserk, Immolate, Rage, Feed, and Offering from Pandora's Box, which is 6 rares out of 8 cards. The way that Pandora's Box works is that each card is equally likely to be generated. This is just how transforming works. Whereas like in card reward screens, you're more likely to see a common than an uncommon, and more likely to see an uncommon than a rare in general. When you're transforming cards, all of the cards are equally likely to be seen. And so transform is more likely to give you a rare than a card reward. Like one of the cards in a card reward is less likely to be a rare than one card that you get from a transform. In this situation though, we've got that going on plus an incredibly, incredibly high roll. On the other hand, like Offering is not insane with Snecko. We already have a Feed, a Dual Wield, and an Exhume, so the 2 extra feeds don't necessarily actually do that much for us. Berserk isn't that good with Snecko, although in this situation I think we get a lot of mileage out of it with Mummified Hand and Birdface Urn, and we're only at 3 energy before it. And Barricade's like okay, but our deck doesn't block that well, so I mean Barricade's fine. Anyway, the point is, like, if you were going to Pandora's Box 6 rares, you could do better than this. But overall, I would say, you know, anytime that you Pandora's Box 6 rares, you're probably pretty happy. Probably okay, right? Actually took a Ghostly Armor here because I'm struggling so much to block, and my Pandora's Box has given me, like, 3 feeds, so I would like to be able to survive in fights for a little while. A Heavy Blade Plus over a Blood for Blood Plus, just because I have a little bit of strength scaling and want to be able to kill things a little bit better. We got another Exhume, and also buy a Feel No Pain. The thing that's going on here is it's showing us one of the card rewards from Orrery. So this actually gives us 5 card rewards, but this only shows us one of them. So we got an Exhume plus some other stuff from it. I'm not sure exactly what. Also got a Feel No Pain again. There's a Disarm. This run has come a very, very, very long way from the start where we were taking 1 Dark Embrace. It feels like this is gotten sort of insane. Watch the HP going up as we're going through this act as well. Got a Pocket Watch in a Demon form and an Entropic Brew with Potion Belt, so that Nemesis fight is obscene in how strong its rewards are. Health keeps on getting higher and higher and higher. This is now completely snowballed. There isn't really much to talk about anymore. So that's 10-0 for me again, which is like really, really awesome. I'm not like expecting to hit 13-0 at this point anyway. I think if you do like reasonable math on I have a silent defect and watcher run ahead of me to pull it off and I'm playing at a high level, it's probably reasonable to say that I have better than a 1 in 3 chance, but probably worse than a 1 in 2 chance. So weirdly, I recently heard a quote, and I believe that's the chance that JFK, I believe that's a chance that JFK gave for nuclear war to break out between the US and the Soviet Union during the disaster around Cuba. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that if I successfully hit the world record from here, that's sort of like the majority of the world being destroyed in nuclear fire or something. I don't know, it's just funny that I had just read that quote like yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, that's my expectation. And that's generally where my mentality is in a situation like this. I'm not thinking, oh my god, I could do this, and getting super, super hyped up or anything like that. I'm just being very logical. I like wake up in the morning. Well, I played 3 runs in a row that day, but after I win this silent run, and I'm like, I would say at that point above 50% to equal 13 after I win this silent run. I mean, I just wake up in the morning before I'm gonna play Slay the Spire, and I think, oh, there's like probably like a 50% chance I'll equal the world record today. That's cool. And then I, you know, go find out whether I do or not. And that's really where my mindset is. If I lose, I don't get super disappointed. If I win, I don't get super excited. I feel very... I don't have control over whether I win or lose in Slay the Spire in the short term, right? And in the long term, I don't desire to have... I don't desire to work super hard to win as much as I could in the long term in Slay the Spire, because other things are more important to me as a Slay the Spire player and as a content creator. As a Slay the Spire player, experimenting with lots of things, learning lots of things about the game, these things are more important to me in the long term. Enjoying myself is more important to me in the long term. One of the things that is most remarkable about my Slay the Spire career is not all of the world records and stuff remarkable about my Slay the Spire career, sure, but I think one thing that I have done better than anybody else who has ever played Slay the Spire, which gets overlooked, is that I've kept playing it for a really, really long time, at high density, like lots of runs per day. And that's a consequence of me like not stressing out about maximizing my win rate all the time, letting myself experiment and have fun and learn the game, and letting the game stay fresh, and letting myself be comfortable feeling like I don't know everything, and not trying to fix that as soon as I can or anything like that. So overall, whether I win or lose at Spire isn't like a huge deal to me. And when you look at streaks like this, they're unlikely, right? Like, it's not super likely that if I play Slay the Spire for 30 days starting from the end of this video, I will get another 13-0 streak. It's just hard to do. It's hard, like, even if you just think it's like coin flipping, but then on top of that, there's like, well, you have to maintain focus for lots and lots of runs in a row. You have to not succumb to pressure as you're getting super high up there in the win streak, stuff like that. But that being said, even though like I have to get lucky to make these streaks anyway, I've still found that if I play well, and I haven't played like tons of runs on this patch. I've averaged like maybe 2 runs a day since 2.2 came out, which is not unreasonable for someone who wants to be considered good at Slay the Spire. Like, if anybody else is playing Slay the Spire and wants to be really good at it, I don't think they can point to my success in Slay the Spire and say, well, he's just playing more than me. That's why, like, if you want to be taken seriously, you should be able to play 2 runs a day, I think. And yeah, as I do that, I get world records, right? So, on the one hand, this is sort of out of my control. It's sort of up to luck and stuff like that. On the other hand, there does end up being a law of large numbers thing, where if I keep playing the game and having fun, and then when I get into streaks, I focus down and just do my best, I'm going to have lots of long streaks. And that's, you know, cool. Over the last, like, couple of years, I haven't always held the world record streaks for, like, multiple characters. I think I'm certain that I've always held a world record streak for at least one of the 4 characters or rotating, ever since Ascension 20 came out. But I don't think I've always held at least 2 of them. And I think my current situation where I hold 4 of them at the same time is... if I've done that before, it's only like once or something, and I don't remember it happening. But yeah, in general, if I do this and enjoy playing the game and focus in, I feel confident that I will have world record streaks. And over the last 2 years, the streaks that I've had that haven't been world record streaks have been like 1 or 2 worse than the world record streak. So I've found this to be consistently a very good way to show that I'm super good at the game, and that's where my brain is at, whether I win or lose. It's like, fine. I spent a year going 9-0 over and over again after Blur set 10-0 as the world record. Like, failing to hit 13 2 weeks after Terrence sets 13 as the world record is not going to upset me or feel grindy or feel demoralizing compared to doing the entire year of being 1 run short of hitting 10 over and over again. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm not that excited. I just want to play good Slay the Spire. We go into a silent run. We hit Blade Dance, Finisher, Predator. I already looked at this run, right? This is the run with the tough bandages where we only ever have 1 calculated gamble. Yeah, so we actually already looked at this run. I win yet another silent run, and I go to sleep. And at this point, I have 2 runs left. I figure there's a better than even odds chance of me equaling the world record, but significantly worse than 50% chance of me breaking it, just because the first run that I have to play after 13 is Ironclad, and the addition of Ironclad, who I think was probably my worst character at this point in time. I think Ironclad is just objectively the worst character. I think a lot of people think that Defect is, but I think that Defect's like pretty easy to do very, very well at, so Ironclad seems more challenging to me. Anyway, yeah, I'm like, you know, I took a day off. I wanted to make sure I was feeling good on the day that I played. I don't know what day of the week that was. This was in February, so I took a Sunday off, which, like, it feels like it's allowed, right? And then we play our Defect run to go for 12-0. We got Leap, Bullseye, an attack potion from a merchant. It looks like I got Wing Boots on floor 0, so it's pretty incredible that I only got 2 elites after getting wing boots on floor 0. Just not a great act for me in the end, I guess. But we get a defragment on floor 4, so it's not too bad of an act. Upgraded defragment, take 25 from sentries and rest, I'm guessing? Yep. Centennial Puzzle sweeping beams, nice. Helps us out, getting a little bit more damage into the deck, and getting a little bit more acceleration into the deck. Keep in mind that Centennial Puzzle, this relic got a lot better when the heart was introduced to the game because the heart has a beat of death. So you can proc this at will on turn 1 in the final boss fight of the game, which makes it really, 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 really good for the final boss fight of the game. Prior to that, it was not as strong. Still pretty good, but significantly less good. But yeah, nowadays Centennial Puzzle is just very, very premium for that situation. Getting lots of very mediocre cards offered to me as I go through this defect run. We end the act with like a barrage, a defragment plus, not really any orb generation stuff, but an echo form from Gremlin Knob. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. Go for the Eyes added to the deck after echo form, wanting to be able to play other cards on the same turn that we play echo form means that grabbing a 0-cost card makes a lot of sense. Grabbed a skim over a double energy, which I think is a little bit close with echo form and Centennial Puzzle already. Maybe not that close. Upgrade Bullseye and beat the Hexaghost and get Electrodynamics. So I don't have much in the way of block. I don't have much in the way of scaling. But I have some pretty decent damage now that I have that Electrodynamics with already Defragment, and I have Wing Boots. So I think the goal here is to mature this deck off of Act 2 Elites, basically. And we get a Velvet Choker. Choker is the perfect sort of relic for doing this. Choker is a relic that limits your late game potential. A card like Fission Plus gets a little bit less exciting. But it's very unusual to hit more than 6 cards per turn during Act 2. So this is sort of the perfect relic for a deck that needs a little bit of help against Act 2 hallways and elite fights, and expects to be strong enough for the boss fights that it doesn't need more than 6 cards per turn, which once you have Echo Form and a Defragment Plus already, it's pretty safe to guess that you're going to be able to beat the boss fights without needing more than 6 cards a turn. The only reason Defect would need more than 6 cards per turn is if you were trying to put together some sort of infinite combo, perhaps with Abacus and Recycle or something like that, but it's so much easier, especially once you have 1 Defragment, it's so much easier to just passively scale off orbs. So we get a Ball Lightning to help our Electrodynamics out, taking 22 damage against the Muggers, unfortunately. I bought a Lantern, which is just, like, it's good to have more energy on turn 1, especially if you desperately want to draw Echo Form on turn 1. It makes it even better to do so. Get a Stack Plus on floor 20. There's a subset of defect runs where block isn't super easy, where Stack Plus is an absolute blessing. And, I mean, this card is so much better than it might look like it is. Something that happens more and more at higher levels of Slay the Spire is you build decks with more cards in them than you might be used to building at, like, Ascension 10, or even at Ascension 20 as a relatively new Ascension 20 player. But the thing is, the better you get at Slay the Spire, the more you're able to take advantage of more and more and more cards, the more you understand how they can fit into your deck in a way that gives you an edge. And, I mean, it's hard to get better at using skip, right? So if you used to be in card reward screens and you would pick skip a lot, as you get more advanced as a Slay the Spire player, you start to notice more and more and more ways to use the other options to improve your chances of winning the run, and so you take them more and more often. And one of the ways that Defect can use lots of cards in a deck to try to win the run is to be blocking with Stack. So, I didn't really want to have to be taking Stack to go 12-0. I would have rather just had, like, bottled Echo Form, Bias Cog with orange pellets, and 2 Glaciers and an Electrodynamics right now on floor 20. But I'm like still feeling confident. I understand how to win off stack as a block engine with defect. I've done it many times before at this point, and so I'm feeling pretty decent here. We do fall all the way down to 15 health off of Masked Bandits. Struggling to draw electrodynamics when we want to here. Get a Liquid Memories, rest, and just go straight into the elite fight. This isn't a deck that can just not be taking elites, I don't think, because it only has the 1 defragment and it hasn't found Frost Orbs yet. If I was in a situation where I had like Glacier and another defragment, I could see myself pathing conservatively through Act 2 with so little health. But we're in a situation where we really need to turn our electrodynamics into more late game strength right now, so risking a very bad draw killing us in elite fights is worth it for the increased chance at rare card rewards, just seeing more card rewards in general, and the relics that we're getting as well. Anyway, we take 21 from Book of Stabbing, we get Bronze Scales and Power Potion. Bronze Scales is like relevant damage in a lot of situations. Like 16 damage per turn against the heart, which is, I think, a lot less than lots of people think it is against the heart, but still it's relevant numbers. Power Potion's nice to keep us going. Unfortunately, we skip our card reward. I think that Blizzard is the first time we've seen a card with Frost Orb written on it, and unfortunately Blizzard is not saying Frost Orb in the way we want. Anyway, rest back to 36. I end up taking the key from the chest. Not really what I want, because I want to be getting stronger right now. Go to Gremlin Leader, take 19 damage over 4 turns, and get the Biased Cognition. So, feeling a little bit better now, but note that we still don't have a Frost Orb. So, we go into the Colosseum now, beginning this fight with 17 health, ending it with 9 health. Is this twice in a row? Is the last run? No, it was this run, right, where we got Colosseum? So, our runs are being blessed by Colosseum right now. Although, our rewards are Shovel, the Courier, Compile Driver, and Focus Potion. Which doesn't block, doesn't make a Frost Orb, and the relics don't really do anything right now either. So, still struggling. We rest and fight elites again. This time we get Toxic Egg Boot Sequence Plus, which is like technically a block card. Distilled Chaos is a good potion. Still no Frost Orbs. However, that being said, I remember vividly, extremely vividly, sitting at 11-0 world record rotating. I picked up this Toxic Egg and I looked at the map and I was like, okay, well, we have Toxic Egg. We go to a question mark, I guess, and if it's apparitions, we just win the run. And I mean, I think that's true here. We have an Echo form, we have Pantograph to keep us healthy against the Act 2 boss. So we'll get our health back, no problem, we don't have to rest. If we hit apparitions here, they are upgraded with Echo form, so that's tons and tons and tons of block. We have stack and like boot sequence and stuff to help us out a little bit with the rest of the block we need. And at that point, if we have 3 apparitions and Echo form to duplicate a lot of them, we don't actually need Frost Orbs anymore. Defect is a more complex character than the other characters because you have this entire extra place for your passive scaling to be where your orbs aren't. And you can use that place to put energy with plasma orbs, damage with lightning orbs, or scaling damage with darkness orbs, or block with frost orbs. And a lot of people oversimplify the defect into, yeah, you just put block there with frost orbs every time, which is very commonly the strongest thing that you can do with it, and certainly the simplest way that you can win with it. But if you want to play defect at a high level, you have to understand how to put the other orbs in that place to do things for you when you need it. And this deck actually, if it gets apparitions, has a lot of block in cards. Defect is capable of blocking with just cards. And at that point, the fact that we actually have a lot of damage in orbs right now, with electrodynamics and bias cognition and 1 defragment, starts to look like a win condition. Like, that starts to look like just a winning deck by itself without further improvement. If we hit apparitions, which we do. So I got Colosseum and Council of Ghosts in this act too. This was one of the most epic Act 2s that I've ever played. Like, I've done stuff like this before in my life, but sitting on 11-0 and doing it just feels a lot cooler. We, like, went from 63 health at the start of the act down to 15 health by 4 floors into the act. And then we just, like, rested, elite fight, miss all the rewards. Rest, elite fight, biased cog, okay. Getting somewhere. Note that I didn't take a relic from this elite fight, by the way. Colosseum with 17 health. We win and don't die, but we don't actually get anything off it. We rest. 30 health. Elite fight. All of these elite fights could go poorly enough to kill us, and we don't have a lizard tail or a fairy in a bottle here. Still don't get enough from that elite fight, and then the final question mark of the act, after doing the most I possibly could to maximize this act and get stuff out of it, and choosing, I believe I chose between a question mark and a hallway fight, and I was like, well, apparitions are so good here that we'd better take the question mark because of the toxic egg we just picked up. We actually hit. This was an awesome, awesome feeling. And from there, I'm feeling much, much better. I ended up taking Fission Plus despite the choker, which I think is fine. But obviously Fission Plus is a lot stronger if you don't have choker. And then, like, you might be thinking, oh, well, I mean, to win 13 in a row, you have to get super lucky, obviously. So, I mean, presumably we'll see Jorbs get a runic pyramid here or something like that. No, I got Tiny House. I got Tiny House and a smoke bomb. This run was pretty epic. Fortunately, defragment from floor 35, and then at this point, we're playing the deck very differently from most defect decks that you've seen me build. We're trying to block with cards. Like, Equilibrium Plus here is a really good block card. It also lets us hold Apparition until the turn we need it, if we draw it on a turn where we don't need it. It basically builds a runic pyramid for us, Equilibrium, when coupled with Echo Form and with holograms. And we only got one hologram, but we ended up with 2 Echo Forms and 2 Equilibriums, so I was not discarding my hand much at all by the time that I got to the end of this run, which makes the combination of Echo Form and Apparition very, very, very powerful, which makes Stack Plus very, very powerful. Stack is obviously a card that we want to play when we are about to reshuffle our deck. We don't want to play this card at the start of drawing our deck. And so having Equilibrium to hold on to it until it's time to play it is a big deal. Gained 50 gold, took Capacitor over another Stack Plus. I was offered Stack Plus there and here and took cards over it, which is, given how much work Stack Plus did once the apparitions were done, I feel it's very disrespectful to Stack Plus. On the other hand, I ended up with exactly enough of them, and having the Capacitor to deal far, far, far more damage with orbs is a pretty big deal. Plus, you know, I'm still thinking, if I get a Glacier, I'm taking it and completely changing fundamentally how the deck wins. Just like one Glacier makes it more powerful to just scale off Frost Orbs. It's so much safer, is the thing, especially with only 40 HP. But I continue not to be offered a Frost Orb. I still don't get a Frost Orb. Seek and Bag of Prep and another Echo Form, though, certainly makes the deck a lot stronger. We get a Charge Battery, Hologram, Stack, and Duplication Potion from the merchant. At this point, I'm just like, okay, no Frost Orbs here. Let's buy the block cards. So we purchased 3 block commons on floor 47. Sometimes this is how Slay the Spire works. Get another Equilibrium from Reptimancer, as well as Symbiotic Virus for some more damage. And this deck actually does fine. This is, like, actually a completely okay deck. It's a little bit tricky to pilot, but I think if you, like, use the dev console to give yourself this deck and went into the Act 3 and 4 Gauntlet, you would find that it's actually very, very, very powerful. And the difficulty in piloting it is just lining the cards up on the right turn, using Equilibrium to make sure that you're able to do that. Took 18 damage from the shield and spear, so I did need to draw apparitions at the right time against the heart. but I did. So, well done me. Also, I have Pantograph, actually, so the damage against Shield and Spear wasn't relevant. I take it back. So that was really, really, really cool. That was a great run, and we're sort of, I'm having a, like, pattern of having incredibly difficult defect runs in world record rotating streaks at this point in my career. I don't know how many people would have won this defect run, and my 8-0 defect run to set my 9-0 that stood for over or almost a year and was only eventually broken after the Watcher released. That one was based on a defect run to go 8-0 where I actually sat for 30 minutes writing things down on a piece of paper in the heart fight. So yeah, defect continues to serve me well when I need it to. Thank you, defect. And then we had a Watcher run. And obviously, when you start a Watcher run that you have to win, you're thinking it would be really nice to just have a really strong Watcher run, like all of those other Watcher runs that I've had that were really strong. And this was not quite that. It eventually got there, but if you look at like my relics for Act 1, Caliper's not great on Act 1, Tiny Chest not great in Act 1, the Boot not incredible in Act 1. Frozen Egg and Toxic Egg, great if you can stay alive, but when your immediate issue is dying, not super useful. And then I also got a Golden Idol, which is another relic, but also doesn't do anything right now. So this was a bit of a stressful one. Crescendo on floor 1. Crescendo's great on floor 1. Second way into Wrath, also easy to line it up with your strongest attacks, whatever they end up being, because it retains, so you just hold it until you draw your strong attacks. And I took Carve Reality over Bowling Bash, just wanting the raw damage for all of the fights over the Bowling Bash, which, like, the next time I get offered Bowling Bash, it's pretty likely I'll take it. It's not like I don't want a Bowling Bash, it's just Carve Reality is doing more for me at first. Just has much more damage on it in most fights. Took a Weave on floor 4. I don't have any Scry yet, but every Watcher deck wants to have Cut Through Fate and is fairly happy to have Third Eye, so there's no reason to think that Weave won't end up being very good, and it's already fine. Like, it's going to be 0 energy for 8 damage, not 0 energy for 4 damage, because we're going to play it in Wrath most of the time, which makes it a perfectly okay card. I skipped Simmering Fury, Prostrate, and Pressure Points. Simmering Fury is like a completely pickable card, but with already 2 ways into Wrath and no way out, I don't think you can really be picking it here. And the other ones are just pretty bad. We got Caliper's and Blasphemy from Gremlin Knob, which we killed in 2 turns, taking 0 damage. Way to go, cut through, what's it called? Carve Reality? Don't even remember its name, but I appreciate it. Blasphemy's very, very solid. Blasphemy is a card that sort of becomes a curse later on in the run. Blasphemy actually didn't exhaust the first time that Watcher, like in Watcher beta or whatever, before she released officially, it didn't exhaust. And so when I would take Blasphemy, it would be with the possibility of building an infinite that just charged up its energy by like entering Calm, then entering Divinity, and then we draw cards and play Blasphemy again, and it just keeps on making us energy over and over again in the turn. And then we have like 50 stacks of die next turn at the end, but it doesn't matter because the enemy's dead instead. However, now it exhausts, so it doesn't really have late game applications other than maybe being used to kill the Act 4 elite. Maybe it speeds up the end of a boss fight by a turn, but usually the way that Watcher's boss fights work in my experience is that she's pretty comfortable taking 1 extra turn. Maybe the exception is against Time Eater, it's probably okay sometimes. Anyway, we take it and it creates this situation for us where we're trying to convert that into an advantage that wins us the game. Upgrade it so we can play it on the right turn, very easily kill sentries and get a Meditate, which is exactly what the deck needs, a way out of Wrath, and holds on to Carve Reality for us if we want. Get the Boot. Got a Frozen Egg, Empty Body, and Ambrosia, which is a solid everything. All of those are good. Cut Through Fate from a looter. This is actually looking pretty good. I don't remember why. I don't know why I remember this being so stressful. Because it was looking quite good. I actually took damage to get Golden Idol. And I got my Bowling Bash. What was I even talking about? What was stressful about this run? Scrawl plus. Astrolabe into Just Lucky, Fear No Evil, Simmering Fury. I mean, all of those are pretty good. They're only commons and uncommons, but they are extremely good commons and uncommons. Okay, Just Lucky is not extremely good. Just Lucky, like, pretty solid though. Yeah, I don't know. I almost want to scrub through this run at this point, honestly. We get a Mental Fortress too. Why do I remember this run being stressful? Obviously I spent 3 hours on it, but I think that was because I was trying to maximize, like, wishing for gold. I don't think that's because it was actually that hard. It's possible that I spent 30 minutes in this run, like, trying to work out whether I should use Skill Potion on turn 1 or 2 or if an elite fight. Maybe that's why I stressed myself out in it. Once I get Rushdown plus against the Book of Stabbing here, this looks so over. Not taking Ragnarok, or Fear No Evil, or Windmill Strike. Ragnarok can be nice as a, like, way to kill Time Eater if you need it, but if you don't need it to do that, I think it's less exciting. I wonder what attack I bottled. Cut Through Fate, maybe? We get an Establishment plus from the champ, so this is a situation where we don't have a ton of block yet, but we do have a Meditate already. And it looks like we end up having 2 Protect Plus in our deck as well, so I think I talked about Establishment just being a pretty solid scaling option to help you out. Nothing incredible, but a nice little bonus in an earlier Watcher run. Empty Mind, Wish Plus happens there. So at this point, we're trying to maximize Wish in all of our fights. Looks like we probably wished for gold against Reptomancer, which is unsurprising given the strength of the deck. Got a Pentagraph, wish for gold against Nemesis, got a Protect Plus to go with our Establishment. Actually took Battle Hymn? Oh, I transformed Defend into Battle Hymn, which I then removed from the deck. In the same way that Runic Pyramid isn't that great on Watcher because it blocks your ability to draw cards with Rushdown and stuff like that, Battle Hymn is often, like, pretty good for the first 2 acts of the run and then becomes actively detrimental and is maybe worth removing, actually. It's a card that you can pretty sensibly take for early in the run and then remove for late in the run, I think. There's Shuriken to see reality, but we still don't have a Flurry of Blows. Flurry of Blows has abandoned me after, like, I'm such a huge Flurry of Blows fan, and I just haven't been offered it in my time of need. We do have Pantograph for these boss fights, so we take a little bit of damage in them, but come out ahead on health with Pantograph and Meat on the Bone. Upgrade a Cut Through Fate? Sure. By Duplication, Potion, Like Water Plus, and Protect Plus. And then I guess we go into a fairly difficult heart fight. It looks like we took a bunch of damage in this fight, but I think I let myself take all of that damage pretty much with the knowledge that I had, like, Toy Ornithopter plus Pantograph. So I think I was just playing turns very conservatively and choosing to take damage in order to get scaling in play and stuff like that. And then the heart ends up not being much of an issue. And that was 13. So that, of course, ties Terrence for the rotating world record. As of right now, none of the world record streaks I have are actually, like, standing alone. Ironclad's tied with Life Coach, Silent with Revolution 9, Defect with Blur from, like, over a year ago, I'm pretty sure still, and then rotating with Terrence. Which is fine. I'm, like, super happy with all of my streaks. My Watcher personal best of 12-0, which I get to try to equal with my next Watcher run, actually, is also a streak that I'm, like, fairly happy with. I think that Watcher will end up extending far, far, far past the 18 that's the current world record. She just wins so often. If somebody is willing to sit down and play 300 runs of Watcher, I think it would be very surprising if they didn't break 18-0 in that sort of a sample size. Like, I think it would be less than 5% chance, actually, that 18-0 didn't get broken if I played 300 runs of Watcher. The problem is the playing 300 runs of Watcher, which is, like, it is impressive to play Watcher long enough and at a high enough level to win 18 times in a row without, like, getting distracted and losing interest, I think, personally, so... That's cool. But yeah, I'm happy with where all of this stuff is at. And I think all of the people who I like currently share world records with have had like immense mastery on the characters while setting those world records, and the state of world records in Slay the Spire is currently in a pretty sweet place. If the game continues to get easier, I think it will start to lose its appeal. But for right now, it's holding on, in my opinion. So, to go 14-0 with Ironclad, this is, like the last time I lost my streak, it was just to, like, Lagavulin or something, so it wasn't much to talk about. But we can take a look at this run. This run got very close, but just never quite got there. It has corruption, but you'll notice this run never hit a Feel No Pain, never hit a Reaper. It has a Dark Embrace, a couple of Disarms, and it's doing a lot of work with like one Shrug It Off. It's got like the Impervious for one turn of block, basically. And the way that this run ended was legitimately I used every bit of block that my deck could make in an efficient way against the Heart and was one turn short of killing it. I just needed one turn more and I would have gotten it down. But I didn't get there. I didn't get offered the cards that let me block in this run, unfortunately. Although I skipped Second Wind on floor 1, so there you go. Here's me second guessing. No, I don't think you're meant to take Second Wind on floor 1 there. Twin Strike is very, very standard and correct. Thunderclap over Second Wind and Trench on floor 2, same sort of idea. Thunderclap's a, like, decent... It's a very high utility Ironclad card. It does lots of cool things for you. It clears artifact charges so you can apply Disarm to the Heart on turn 5. It sets up Whirlwind, it sets up Reaper, clears artifact charges in other situations. It saves you an upgrade on Bash, so you can upgrade something else. Because if you like get to a 15 card deck and this applies 1 vulnerable and Bash applies 2, then your 15 card deck is able to keep an enemy vulnerable, which is what you want for like the Act 1 boss fights and Gremlin Knob and Lagavulin too. So it's a solid card to pick up. Chemokinesis, which has been buffed on patch 2.2, so even stronger than it used to be, and I used to like it a lot already. Used to be 18 and 2, and now it's 20 and 2, and also it deals 1 less damage to you when not upgraded, so that's pretty nice. So good damage at the start of the run, and we get a Birdface Urn from Scrapu, so I was actually feeling really, really happy right now. I got Juzu Bracelet from the Whale, by the way, which is eh. Took Anger and Blood Potion from Gang of Gremlins. I don't think I've gotten a chance to talk about Anger while looking at Ironclad so far, but I am a big fan of Anger. It does the right amount of damage for 0 energy to be worth picking up early in the game, just to increase your deck's ability to deal damage. And then later on in the game, there are all sorts of situations where like a deck with the ability to strength scale and draw cards can just really go off with like 15 or 16 Angers and just be playing Angers every turn. In fact, I think I didn't play it a single time at the end of this run because I didn't draw that many cards and I needed to be drawing like dual-wielded Blood for Blood to win or something like that, but This is the sort of situation where Anger could maybe have won the end game for me if things had been a little bit different. The problem is that on top of not having block or sustain, the deck also doesn't have any strength. So really it's sort of remarkable that this deck got to the heart at all, but that's the power of like Self-Forming Clay, Birdface Iron, Magic Flower, and Runic Pyramid probably. We did have 3 strength from Girya, I believe. So, upgrade Hemokinesis, we kill Gremlin Knob and get Bag of Prep, disarm Liquid Bronze, all fine. Rest and get Hair, take damage for gold, get an Armaments for a little bit of block. Just a like solid utility card. It's hard for Armaments to be super bad. Always gonna do okay for you at least. Got a Self-Forming Clay and a Dark Embrace. This is all going perfectly well so far. Decided to upgrade Armaments. I heal at the store. Because my health goes up here because... Hello? I don't know why my health goes up there. Anyway, okay. I rested on 415 and beat the slime boss fairly comfortably. Maybe I didn't need to rest. Maybe that was the difference in the run. Probably not. I ended up being significantly more than an upgrade away from winning, I think. But maybe. End up taking Corruption over Juggernaut and Limit Break, which I think is very normal and sensible. Take a Cursed Key. Taking lots of Cursed Keys in these runs recently. Got a Pommel Strike, Disarm, skipped Flex, Headbutt, Anger, which is all fine. Liquid Memories from the lab. Got an Evolve and an Entropic Brew, so Evolve gives us one way to get more card draw. It can be tough to get enough card draw for late game Ironclad decks, but Evolve is definitely one way to help. And with like Bag of Prep and Centennial Puzzle, that's a lot of it too. So these are going to help us draw the cards, and then Evolve is going to get in play and help make sure that our turns keep on being pretty good going forward. Dual Wield Plus is theoretically a full heal with Birdface turn, and I believe there were moments in this run where that stuff started to get sort of out of control. The Mayhem is from the floor 14 Merchant, by the way. Mayhem, this is a strong card on Ironclad specifically, I think. I don't think this card's anywhere near as good on Silent, Defect, or Watcher. The problem with it on Defect is it doesn't work with Echo Form. The problem on Watcher is it doesn't work with Meditate. Cards like Meditate that end your turn when played. And the problem on Silent is it doesn't work with Wraith Form. I think it's okay on Silent. There are some bad hits on Silent, but it's probably often okay on Silent. But on Ironclad, there's very little downside. Usually on Ironclad, you just want to play all of your cards. And also on Ironclad, you struggle to just get output for turns. Like, there's very seldom a guarantee on Ironclad that from turn 3 onward, every turn that you play is going to be a good turn where you draw enough cards to do all of the things you need. Ironclad just tends not to have enough card draw to really guarantee that. And so Mayhem helps you out to make your turns a little bit better. Anyway, upgraded that. We buy Combust and Shrug It Off. An idea with Combust is that if we hit a Rupture, all of a sudden we will have Strength Scaling. So it's like an okay card which has a win condition, like a, I don't know, a 15 to 20% chance of win condition oiled into it as well. Got an Enchiridion, so we have the ability to like hit a demon form if we need to in the big fights. Spoilers, we didn't. Pommel Strike Plus. At this point, I am feeling like the deck isn't quite there, and so I actually decided to open the chest here with Cursed Key. At some point, if you recognize that you are in a death spiral and on your way toward losing, it's time to roll the dice at high variance events and see if you can get the run back on track. And getting Tiny Chest from Yeah. An event is not it when I have a cursed key, right? Like, so now I'm going to get more chests, which I will open and they will give me strikes. Like, this is not what I was going for at all. That having been said, with self-forming clay, pain can actually be quite good, so I'm still, like, I'm still in it. Like, there's still all sorts of ways that I can win this run. Gremlin Leader was pretty mean and gave us a whetstone, which upgraded Pommel Strike and Strike, which isn't even that bad. And then we rest and survive the Collector just barely and get a Runic Pyramid. So Runic Pyramid at least is very strong. We don't have any block cards, but the block cards that we don't have can be played on the right turn to block well for us. And we also have the ability to play any other good cards that we get over the course of the run at the right times. It's just, unfortunately, we never get any, basically. Take a Havoc, take a Seeing Red Plus to help out our Runic Pyramid deck. Pretty normal. Remove a Strike. Actually upgraded Combust, which I think is sort of interesting, but yeah, sure. Preparing for like Reptimancer with no AoE in the deck, it makes sense. We get Mind Bloom, which is the absolute dream, and get a Gurya and Flex Plus off it, so this is some strength maybe for late game. An Akabeko from Nemesis, as well as a Fire Breathing to like deal a little bit of damage. Looks like I skipped that chest. We lift, we skip this chest. Maybe if I'd opened these chests. I don't know. Reptimancer beats us up real bad. This is why we upgraded Combust, right? And we get only a Blood Vial and a Block Potion. Yikers! This is where we purchase Impervious at the store. So if we count how much block we have in our deck, like we have 2 Disarms, those sort of count. A Metallicize Plus, an Armaments Plus, a Shrug It Off, and 4 Defense from our starter deck. That is our defense. And there's no like sustain here other than like Bird Face Turn, which is like pretty good, especially combined with Magic Flower. But yeah, we just don't really have much here, unfortunately. So we get a Warcry Plus, which is fine. We get a Magic Flower and a Metallicize Plus from Nemesis, which is trying to do a lot. Could have taken True Grit here, but the Metallicize blocks for a lot more than it does. Also, the Metallicize heals with Magic Flower. We take a Hemokinesis Plus over a Ghostly Armor. I think that's sort of interesting. My thinking at this point, though, is that we are going to have to kill things like as quickly as we can. And Hemokinesis does actually proc self-forming clays, so it actually blocks for us as well as dealing very good damage. So I don't hate that decision. Make it through Donu Deka. Make it through Awakened One. Just barely in both cases. 7 turns and 13 turns. Keep in mind though that we had double disarm for the Awakened One fight, so I think a lot of the time spent in this fight was before the transform, just like not taking damage while upgrading all of our deck with Armaments Plus, basically. So it might look like it's a bit spookier than it actually was. We lift. We're at 2 out of 3 lifts. We get a Speed Potion. The idea with the Speed Potion buy from this merchant is I don't have the ability to keep 5 dexterity. I'm actually just planning to use it on a turn where I play like 4 defense in order to make 20 more block. Take way too much damage, unfortunately, against Shield and Spear, but it's unsurprising because we don't have any block cards in our deck really, so why would we not take damage? And the heart kills us. That was it. If you look at the next runs, I made it to the heart on silent and then won 3 more. So this is actually 18 in a row that made it through the Act 3 bosses. which is like a victory question mark, right? So if you're playing the victory question mark category and trying to beat the Act 3 bosses, which is what we used to always do back before the heart existed, that's what I had a 6-0 streak on in October of 2018. This is an 18-0 streak in that category, which is pretty cool. That is certainly the longest streak that I have had in that category. I don't know if anybody else has done more than that because we don't really, like, nobody really tracks that one, you know? But for me, the fact that I managed to take runs all the way to the heart for my next 5 after this as well was pretty cool. And yeah, that's that. I haven't been doing as well since that streak at all. I mean, this isn't terrible either. But one of the things that happens after I like set a world record streak and play 127 heart kills in January is I want to just vibe a little bit, right? So if you look at my run history, we've got a floor 2 prismatic shard ironclad run here, and I think a little bit of other memeing here and there as well. I've been playing, so it looks like I played 4 watcher runs in a row. I'm currently like, it was funny, my mods update a streak command in my Twitch channel. I don't really pay attention to my streaks unless I'm pretty close to extending my personal best. That's the first time that I really noticed that they exist. But I guess some viewers really want to know, am I 2-0 or 3-0 on silent right now? Like, I don't know why anybody cares, but it's pretty funny. Like, the streak command yesterday was saying 0 ironclad, 0 silent, 0 defect, 10 watcher. And so I've been sort of frustrated that this watcher streak exists because I just want to vibe right now in Spire. Do some transformative experimenting time. Maybe like play some runs where Twitch chat chooses the cards or something. But I keep on winning with watcher. I talked about this streak as a 10-0. I went to 11-0 with like one of the worst starts to a watcher run I have ever seen. Look at this start. This is Golden Idol Boot, and that's the end of Act 1. Those are my relics. And then I went into Act 2, got a question mark, and was like, I am so far behind, I need to try to hit a good face. And got the hungry face that eats my next relic instead. This run just won because, like, Flurry of Blows is so obscene, and watcher commons and uncommons are capable of winning without, like, any help at all. Which is pretty ridiculous. I ended up getting a Mummified Hand and an Ornamental Fan, and honestly, by the time I had these 2 relics, like, this run was already a win. So, watcher's pretty crazy. But yeah, that watcher win streak I guess will continue, but this journey of looking at all of these world record streaks is coming to an end. I hope you've enjoyed this burst of like a sort of different mode of content from me. I haven't been streaming as much because I've been sitting in my office talking to myself for hours every day, recording these recaps. I know I said that before I ended, I wanted to go on a tangent about transferability of learning, transferability of knowledge. So I'm going to do that now. I think I have semi-interesting things to say. If you want to leave because we're done talking about the Spire exactly, you can, but we're sort of still talking about the Spire. In fact, if anything, we're more talking about the Spire than we were before. So I've been thinking about this concept a lot lately because I was reading a book about machine learning, and it was talking about how difficult it is for AI to transfer its knowledge about something to something else. So if, for example, you look at the best chess player in the world, which is a computer at this point, that computer is very inadequate at explaining why it's doing what it's doing to humans who want to learn from it. It's also very incapable of explaining what it's doing to other chess computers who want to build on its knowledge. You can like sort of copy paste the best chess engine in the world and have it as a starting point for a new chess engine, but that's not really transferring the knowledge. That's like copy pasting the chess engine. It's not quite the same thing. And it's also very bad at transferring its knowledge about chess to winning at other games. So there might be some confusion here because like AlphaZero became the best chess player in the world, and then AlphaGo very quickly afterwards became the best Go player in the world. And the way that it gets talked about, it sounds like it's like the same artificial intelligence learning these new games, sort of. But in actuality, they are two completely different computer programs. AlphaGo has no ability to use the knowledge of AlphaZero at chess in order to become good at Go. AlphaGo became good at Go from scratch, despite the fact that AlphaZero had spent all of that time being so good at chess. And so an advantage that humans have over machines is that we have the ability to transfer our learning. I can get really good at Slay the Spire, and I can tell you what I'm doing in a way that communicates it to you so you can get better at Slay the Spire too, which is really cool. But here's the kicker, which I think is like sort of a tricky lie. It's not really true that I can do that. I can do that with some elements of Slay the Spire, and in these videos I've been sort of codifying current knowledge that I have about patch 2.2 for you, which may evolve. I might think different things 3 months from now. A lot of the stuff that I say about cards may be significantly different, or may at least be different in nuance. A lot of my decisions on which card I pick and which situations may have changed, because I'm going to keep getting better at the game. So the thing is, could you, having watched these videos, also predict how I'm going to change and get better just as fast as me? Probably not, right? Because I'm sitting here having played the game for over 5,000 hours. Since I was a kid, I've been playing strategy games. I've been playing strategy games at the highest level since I was like 14 or something. I think I hit #1 ranking on Magic Online in my later teens, but I was hitting the top 50 Magic Online players in my like early teens. So I have a huge history that I'm drawing on when I look at a game like this and try to work out what the right thing is to do. And my ability to communicate what you should do on patch 2.2, in the opinion of me personally right now, doesn't transfer that experience to you. I'm not teaching you all of my ability. I'm just telling you some current knowledge. Something that I compare this to illustrate it for people sometimes is walking. If you were to try to explain to someone who had never walked before how to walk using words, there would be all sorts of things that prevented you from succeeding. You could probably explain the concept of walking, like you have legs and you put one in front of the other over and over again to move around, but you don't know how to tell someone exactly how physically all of the muscles in your legs and body are moving in order to keep your balance as you walk, and how that changes when you're walking uphill or downhill or on slippery ground or upstairs or anything like that. Like, I don't know what's going on there. It's subconscious. It's ingrained. On top of that, physically, your body is able to do it, where someone who's never walked before isn't going to have muscles trained that make it easy to walk. If someone's been lying in bed for 16 years and that's been their entire life, the matter of learning to walk is not just going to be a matter of finding out what the knowledge is. It's going to be a matter of practicing long enough that your muscles start to understand what's going on. And when I play Slay the Spire, I not only have subconscious knowledge that I don't really understand enough to communicate it to you, I also have conscious knowledge, which is like too complicated to teach someone without having taught them 9 steps worth of things leading up to it. I'm sort of giving you step number like 3-ish right now, I guess, maybe. Like, I'm not explaining literally what the text on all the relics is in this video, but I'm also not explaining some pretty advanced... It's probably like step 5 out of 10 or something like that. This talking part right here is getting up toward like step 7 or 8, actually, where I'm starting to talk about more abstract ways of thinking about this. On top of that, I actually have physical things going on with me when I play Slay the Spire now. I've played this game 5,000 hours. I've played it on basically the same setup the entire time. So like, sometimes when people are watching my videos, they'll comment like, you are in Act 4, but you keep on opening the map to look at what the map is. The map is always the same in Act 4. Why are you doing that? And the answer is, like, me, Steven's consciousness isn't doing that. What's going on is I have a pattern in my body where which floors are coming up next can change decisions. And so I need to know, but instead of keeping that in my short-term memory all the time, which is a limited resource which I want to use for other things, I just have a habit of opening the map and looking, which I don't really even think about. It just happens over and over again. And that creates a scenario where if something is there that matters, I'm going to observe it using some powers of observation that are not in use while my brain is churning, because I don't really need to like look at stuff while my brain is churning. And then it's going to like feed that information back into my thought process and say like, whoa, you're thinking about all this stuff, but you need to remember that there's an elite fight in 3 floors and the campfire isn't until after it. You know, that sort of thing. And it's just like, looking at the screen while I'm in the run isn't helping me, and so I have this habit of opening the map, which may help me. And that's going on. And that's part of how I play Slay the Spire. And I'm not going to like sit you down and train you to do that, because I believe it's like the right way to play or anything. It's sort of like, obviously you need to know what's on the map, like one way or another, but I'm not going to say that you have to know by having a habit of opening the map over and over again. I'm just saying that like part of my ability to play this game at such a high level, and like win runs in under 2 hours over and over and over again, is that I have like habits and idiosyncrasies built into how I behave within the Slay the Spire window, which are subconscious, which I'm not even going to be able to tell you about while you're listening to me talk, really. I don't even know they exist. I know that I upgraded my monitor from a 30-inch monitor to a 32-inch monitor, but it still has the same number of pixels on it. And so my Slay the Spire window is slightly larger in terms of real-world dimensions now, and it took me 3 days to feel comfortable. I was uncomfortable looking at it for 3 days. There's stuff in my brain that just expects things to be a very specific way. And so when I'm telling you all of this stuff, what I'm hoping is not just that you hear me talking about, here's my opinion of Cut Through Fate on 2.2 patch for Slay the Spire. What I'm hoping is that you hear some of what's going on in my brain and some of how I'm thinking about all of these different things and how I'm approaching learning them and getting better. And you may never aspire to be a world record holder for Slay the Spire, but it could be that you really want to get super good at a different game that you like. And you might hear some of the things that I'm saying about how I get good at Slay the Spire and apply them to that other game and benefit from them. That's a hope of mine. Or you might not play games, but you might really want to do well on a project at work. And you might get some ideas from what I'm saying about how I approach Slay the Spire that help you on a project with work, or getting your degree in college, or deciding what you want to do for a career, or something like that. I think the beauty of games is that they are a common rule set that people who are very different from each other can come to. And when you're talking about something in a space where the rules are the same for everyone, a lot of the barriers for communication between people get broken away. If I go to a park and people are doing lots of different things, it's pretty hard for me to strike up a conversation, maybe with someone who I've never met before, because I don't know much about them. I don't really know exactly why they're at the park, stuff like that. Now, if I go to the park and like play soccer or something, then I might be able to talk to people who are playing soccer, and it might go a bit easier, sure. But I think games are, like, you don't even have to be geographically in the same place to talk about games. I can talk to someone who lives in Europe while I am sitting here in the US playing Slay the Spire. And we don't need to have similar cultural backgrounds or similar life experiences or similar current life situations. We don't even have to have similar levels of understanding of Slay the Spire for us to talk about Slay the Spire and understand each other pretty well. Because the rules are the same. If we go into the game and we fight Jawworm and we click on Bash and we play Bash, it does the same thing to Jawworm, no matter which of us is doing that. And that isn't true for almost anything else in life. If I, like, call someone and say hi, by the time that I've called someone and said hi, they've already, like, heard my voice and assumed a billion things about me. And the world's very gross and unfair a lot of the time. And because of that, it's really hard for me to talk about how my experiences in certain spaces work, because everybody's interacting with me based on assumptions that they have about me that they won't have about other people. For me, often I benefit from assumptions that other people have about me because, like, for example, in the space of gaming, I look like a gamer. Like, somewhat balding white guy. Yeah, that looks like a gamer. Right now, as I am recording this video, there's a lot of talk and visibility being placed on women in Hearthstone. There are a tremendous number of very talented, very successful Hearthstone players who are women who have generally been overlooked and ignored by the official tournament circuit. And some of that is because of sexism from the people building the tournaments, and some of it is because of sexism from the community, where women are just not taken seriously by other people in the community, unfortunately. They're subject to harassment and bullying. They're not invited to, like, test and talk about deck ideas and stuff like that. And this is in the year 2021, not the year, like, 1880. So I don't know what is going on with the world. It pisses me off, and I will never stop being pissed off about this. But at least if I talk to one of those women about an actual game of Hearthstone, the cards do the same things for both of us, and we can actually talk about that and understand each other's experience. Because even if we're talking about the act of playing Hearthstone, I'm not going to understand ever exactly what it's like for them, because I'm never actually going to experience it. All I can do is listen and learn and believe what they say, and hope that that gets me close enough to relate. The beautiful thing about games is that they do treat us the same way. And so, when I'm talking about Slay the Spire, I'm often trying to talk about something that will be useful to you in some other way, instead of just being about Slay the Spire. I'm not trying to play Slay the Spire to maximize my chance of winning a run of Slay the Spire every time, because I don't think it's that important. What I think is really important, though, is that when I sit down and play Slay the Spire and a couple of thousand people watch, I, am engaging and approachable for lots of people. I'm inclusive, so lots of people can come to my channel, and I'm teaching useful things and giving off good vibes and stuff like that. And so my overall general point is, some of you have probably just watched me talk about 5 world record streaks that I've set, plus 10 watch it runs for the last like 11 hours, or 11 hours over the last few days or something. And my general takeaway point that I have is that understanding what the cards in these runs do and exactly what I did to win these runs is not that useful to you. And all of the time that I've just spent talking about it is not going to be that incredibly useful a year from now. When there's a different patch, when people have gotten better at Slay the Spire, stuff like that. It may be a little bit useful right now, but it doesn't have longevity, really. It doesn't stay true and relevant. But when I tell you these other things, and I tell you how it was that I got to this point, and I talk about my journey, and I tell you how I'm feeling as I go towards this big career-defining moment, and I tell you how I improved, and I tell you why I'm thinking certain things rather than what those things I'm thinking are. And I share like my frustration, I share my joy at seeing other people succeed, and all of that stuff. I hope that that sticks with you, and I hope that you can analyze that and think, well, this thing that Jorbs said about how he's interacting with the game is different from how I interact with the games, and it seems like it could be useful. It could be useful when I play these games, and maybe it could be useful when I go to work or something too. Maybe it's something that I could generally think about more in the world. And I want to encourage you not only to like listen to me saying that and like think critically about it, and if it sounds good to you, take it away, and if it doesn't sound good to you, dismiss it. You don't, I mean, that's the thing, right? About once you step away from Slay the Spire, we don't exist in the same rule set anymore. So what works for me may legitimately just not work for you at all. Unfortunately, it sucks. But I also want to encourage you to like, you can be someone who does that too. Encourage people who aren't the same as you to play games, and also like share the things that you learn from games through games with other people. I don't think this should be about winning at the games. I think that that is a tremendous disservice to how powerful games are. So, that is my sign-off note. Thank you for joining me. If you see this before April 21st, which like probably you won't, but you might. April 21st is my birthday, and we're raising money for charity water. We raised $10,000 last year, and they got a bunch of sand filters set up in Cambodia to give school kids clean water, and we're gonna do it again, and it's gonna be awesome. And it's just like some of the highest leverage money that you can put into the world is empowering people who need a basic resource like water in a way that lets them succeed where otherwise they would be stuck in an environment of scarcity and suffering. So I think it's awesome. I think it's a really good cause. And if you're around and want to stop by, we'll be playing some Spire runs and having fun, and it should be a good time. And if not, like, follow, subscribe, tell all your friends, tell your grandmother that you love this video so much. I think we're really close to 50,000 subscribers, and I think if we get to 100,000 subscribers, I can change the channel URL from Joe and Ribs to Jorbs, and I'm really excited about maybe doing that someday. So if 50,000 of you could press subscribe right now, that would be cool. And other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.